Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 298. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge in the comic forums, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and we're also on this episode joined by longtime friend of the show and special guest, Darrell Taylor. Darrell's going to be joining us as we discuss the new book Fairest from Vertigo. Plus, we also talk about Green Arrow number 7, Detective Comics number 7. We had another two books that we listed for this episode. They're going to be bumped to next week. We're also next week going to be for sure talking about Saucer Country, the brand new book from Vertigo as well. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, speaking of Vertigo, I love when they do this. It's all four number 3 Vertigo issues of these brand new titles. Saucer Country number 3, Fairest number 3, The New Dead Guardians number 3, and Dominic Laveau, Voodoo Child number 3. I'm really a fan of DCB Service bundling these books together. They're going to be $2.99 a piece. Regularly, they're $11.96. So if you're trying these titles, really for the cost of one, you get to try all four. And that's a nice deal for somebody, we're talking about budgeting this episode, not just time, but financially. And when you're trying to fit something into your budget and you're trying to try some new things, it's great when you know you're pre-ordering that you can get them at a deal, and then you can make those decisions as the books start coming to your doorstep. Hey, do I want to keep all the titles? Do I want to keep one or two? What fits into my budget? And the great thing about this is it's a no-risk situation because you're only really paying for one of the books by the fact that they offer that 75% off discount. Thank you, DCBService.com, for providing those great deals and continuing to support our podcast. Over at InStockTrades.com, episode 300 is coming. We have one more show, and then we'll be kicking off Knightfall. Over at InStockTrades.com, you can still pick up all 3 volumes, which are going to be on our show for episode 300, 301, and 302. This includes Volume 1, Batman, Knightfall, The Broken Bat, regularly $19.99, 40% off, only $11.99. Batman Knightfall Part 2, Who Rules the Night, $17.99, 40% off, only $10.79. And Knightfall Part 3, Night's End, which it skips the Knight's Quest storyline and goes right to the ending, the final chapter of the series. $19.99 regularly, 40% off, only $11.99. We will finish that on episode 302. So I'm really excited for our anniversary show. Want you to be a part of it, whether you have this series already, if you've never read it before, or you're just revisiting it now. InStockTrades.com is a great source to pick up these volumes and join us. I know Gary Arkell, one of our show listeners, just mentioned that he was getting the books to pick it up, and I know other listeners have mentioned along the way. I'm thrilled that you guys are going to be joining us for this episode. This is something I've always wanted to do on the show, and I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to finally do this as an anniversary for us. It's going to be 6 years of Raging Bullets at the end of this month, and that's going to kick off the anniversary celebration for us. So I really thank you guys for listening and hope you'll enjoy that upcoming show. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth in the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
I never know when we're going to get one of those extra enjoys.
Yeah. You got to give it every so often. You can't overuse it. You can't underuse it. It's got to be there. It's got to be the right moment. It's got to have that right vibe.
What made this the right moment?
I don't know. I just felt like doing it.
I didn't know if there was a method to the because sometimes with you there is, and it's usually pretty scary. Let's talk some comics.
So, who's got a camera? Ooh, get one of me and the kid first. Then you and me, then the 3 of us, and then one with the crowbar. Then...
Our first review this episode is going to be of Fairest number 1. Bill Willingham's the writer. Phil Jimenez is on pencils and the variant cover. Andy Lanning on inks. Andrew Dahlhaus on colors. Todd Klein letters. Adam Hughes doing the cover. Romulo Farad. It's Fajardo Jr. I know I'm going to butcher that. Variant cover colors. Gregory Lockhart, associate editor. Shelley Bond, editor. And Fairest is, of course, created by Bill Willingham. Joining us for this segment, actually for this episode, is going to be longtime friend of the show and podcaster extraordinaire, Darrell Taylor. Darrell, welcome back to Raging Bullets.
Hey, glad to be back on again.
Now, Darrell,
welcome back to the Raging Bullets podcast. Welcome back. And I'm not going to go through the whole song.
This is further proof that there is a God.
I'm trying to be nicer to the listeners.
If you were nicer, you wouldn't have started
I get equal number of hate mail and equal number of that was funny, man.
Part of the show. It's part of the show. You singing should be that's just the way Raging Bullets is. It should be always a part of Raging Bullets.
Oh, why do you encourage him? It was Darrell. You joining us for this segment came. You and I chat regularly, and you had mentioned your interest in chatting some Vertigo. I really was excited about the new number ones because I know Jim and myself, when we talk about Vertigo, we're always in different places with the Vertigo titles. Like, he's getting some in trade, I'm getting some in monthlies, and it never seems to overlap enough to do segments like this. And I figured with this launch of the brand new titles, what a great time to talk about Vertigo and have everybody on the ground floor. What about you? What was the attraction to you? What is your history with the Fables universe? Are you a regular reader? Or is this something new? With the new Vertigo launch, or how did this work out for you?
It's with some books I will get like single issues, like iZombie. I get single issues. I have to get it every month. Fables has always been that book that I started reading Fables in trade, and I just haven't stopped doing it that way. I'm about maybe 3 trades behind. Like the War, I didn't finish that last trade with the War yet, and it just fell away from me. I didn't, and I haven't jumped back on it. But I said I'm not even going to do that for Fairest. I said I'm going to just jump in, get the first issue, give them the sales early, because I noticed with Vertigo that a lot of us do the trade thing, and it doesn't help the sales on the single issues. So,
well, one of the things for me with Fables, I jumped on Fables late. I ended up hearing such good reviews of it that it was about 3 trades in when I started reading it, and then I started following it monthly thereafter. It's been one of those books I really enjoy. I'm with you. I enjoy reading it in the trade format. And when I say in the trade format, it doesn't have to be traded. I like reading the arcs together. I just really, I find that it reads really well that way. I enjoy it. So I tend to stockpile it and do that. Well, what happened was, with just being busy and stuff like that, because I stockpiled it, I got a little bit behind. So then I went back and started rereading it again from the beginning, not because I had to, just because I really like it. So I'm behind on it for that reason. I'm about where you are, actually, the War, which is I'm really enjoying. And I've enjoyed the series Jack of Fables. I've enjoyed those Cinderella miniseries that they've done recently.
I love those.
I think they're just tremendous.
I love those.
So, it's a universe that I just really dig. I think all the creators and art teams and writers that have been associated with the various projects, whether it's the main series or the spin-offs, have just the hardcovers have been top-notch. The special hardcovers that they've done have been really top-notch. It's just a great series. So I'm with you with Fairest. Fairest is the one I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to be able to start on the ground floor of a Fables series. I was worried jumping into this book, and this is something maybe, Jim, you could speak on to start off. I was worried that this series, like maybe you'd have to know a lot of Fables information in order to enjoy this series. And I didn't feel that you had to. But, Jim, what experience are you having?
Well, actually, I had a relatively pleasant experience with this, with little to no information on the Fairest universe. I've read a couple stuff. I read some Jack of Fables, jumped in on that, but it always ends up Fables, Jack of Fables, the Cinderella, so all that always ends up getting dropped by me, and it's never about quality. It's literally about I have too many titles, and I need to trim the fat. I need to cut down on some stuff, and because these aren't DCU proper, they always end up getting the cut for me. But when I read it, I go, this is a fun story. I should be reading more of this. And it's every time I read one of these things, I'll jump on, to in-stock trades. I'll look, okay, let me get this trade. And I end up buying a couple stuff, a couple trades just whenever I get a taste of this stuff. So it's a fun read, and I found this book very, very readable with no knowledge on what happened. And it's funny because I got a couple questions as we go on through. I'm wondering about some stuff.
Now, Jim, what have you read in Fables, actually? 'Cause you mentioned the Jack of Fables, you mentioned the regular Fables book. How much of it have you read? How limited is it? Or
It's very, very limited on the reading. I picked up Jack of Fables for maybe the first 10 issues. I think somewhere around there is where I stopped picking up Jack of Fables, and I picked up the first Fables trade. I think is So it's very limited, but I understand the concept behind the universe. So I have that, that's basically the only knowledge I have really going into this is I understand the general concept behind it. But you guys are talking about war, all that. I have no idea what the heck you're talking about. And just like the beginning of this issue, the city was destroyed. I really don't know what city this is, and I don't know how it was destroyed. But the story, it's fun enough and it was a good enough read that I was able to follow everything going on here and actually enjoy it. So this is a good starting point, a good standalone story, because I have very limited knowledge on it, but that back stuff didn't bother me with this. I didn't feel like, I'm missing something huge.
Well, and just so you know, the original Fables series, when it kicked off, I don't know how much of that you remember when you first read it, but it kicks you off at a point where they're already in our Earth, our world, crossed over from their world, their kingdom, because they've had to run away and escape. So very similar to the beginning of this issue, in the regular Fables series, you're kind of dropped into a status quo that you're gradually fed along the way. So I found that to be something when this kicked off. I'm like, this reminds me a lot of what it was like to start reading Fables initially. We've got, him, like you said, in the middle of this, destroyed city. And Darrell and I were deliberately being vague on the war because we don't want to obviously ruin that for anybody, seeing as we're not actually discussing that book.
Yeah.
That we're being vague on purpose. But you don't really need to know anything. There was no point in time in this where I'm like, I got to go look something up. I want to know who anyone is. It fed you a lot of really cool information. I love seeing Alibaba, which the artwork in this I just think is really, it's Phil Jimenez. How do you go wrong there? This is a gorgeous, gorgeous book.
Yeah, this opening, the 2-page spread where you see the destroyed city, just detail and just little extra nook here, a little cranny there. I was just like, wow, this is one of those things where I was just like, second, third read through, I was just sitting there staring at the page, looking at the destruction and just going, this is cool.
It reminded me of when he had his run on Wonder Woman, when he would draw Paradise Island.
Yeah. Did you get a chance? I don't know, Jim, how much Wonder Woman you've read in trade. I read the issues of Wonder Woman when he was on the work. Oh my gosh, was that a gorgeous book. But this is really, Darrell, great reference. This is a great example of what that was like. The vast landscapes of Themyscira looked absolutely gorgeous in his run. Did you get a chance to read any of that, Jim?
No.
You gotta read it.
Yeah.
You got to.
Especially if you enjoyed the artwork in this, that's Wonder Woman well worth seeking. And not just for the artwork, great stories, too. He really had an understanding of the majesty of Wonder Woman and the series. It was a great run. It's another one of those definitive runs that I can't recommend enough to people.
And imagine Nightwing was in it. Nightwing, Batman, Wonder Girl.
Jim, you were saying?
Who was he an artist for?
Him. He wrote it.
Oh, he wrote it? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So he was a writer-artist on that book, which I don't know how you do that. Especially with this kind of artwork. I don't know how you pull that off. That endlessly impressed me during his run. Because the book was absolutely stunning. And I don't know how you do both.
It's like George Perez's run. Like George Perez's art is so, stylized and with detail. And I don't know how he did it either.
I like this effort. When I don't know if I'm pronouncing it even right. These are a lot of the things I've read for years. I love fantasy novels and I love creatures. I play a lot of role playing games and things like that. But it's all text. You never know. They never do good pronunciation keys. But I love this. Just a lowly imp. But as with anything in the Fables universe, you get this idea that this guy is clearly more. This little creature is clearly more than what he seems to be. He's got his own little game, own little agenda. I like this because Alibaba, he's a thief. So you're going to get involved in some stuff, in order to try and advance yourself that are shady. You're going to be dealing with people who might appear to be one thing from one end, but they've got their own little thing going on the other. And this little creature's using Alibaba to obviously progress his own agenda. There was something about that I just really dug. It fit like a Fable story. It fit like the Alibaba and the thievery kind of thing. That's one of the things I've really enjoyed about the Fable universe is we're taking characters from classic fairy tale stories. You're putting them in this world, giving them more of a modern flair, giving them some depth and that fits that modern flair. Yet they're staying at their core true to the original character concepts, which is something that I'm just finding immensely fascinating to read these characters and see when they interact with each other. Because that's one of the things, I think he's got an unlimited opportunity with this Fables book to just keep going. Because there's so many characters that, like, as you progress one, that gives an opportunity then to bring other ones in and progress them with that character in a direction that you never expected them to go in, because that character now acts as a catalyst, an agent of change to the whole Fables world. So it constantly, this book has always felt fresh to me. It's what keeps me coming back. Is I like that it's like this contained universe where you can do like spin-off series, you can do mini-series, you can do hardcovers, and or a novel, prose novel, which is Peter and Max is a great prose novel that I would highly recommend for anybody who likes the Fables universe. And all of this stuff each one of them has a jumping on point, like, that's constantly available. Like, you can read Fables in order, but realistically, there's a lot of jumping on points throughout the series. When there's a new arc beginning, there's really no reason why you can't jump on to Fables. And this book is one, I think this is a perfect jumping on point to the Fables world to see if it's right for you. You're getting one single issue to start off a brand new series. You don't really need to know anything. It's not crossing over into the main book, other than the fact that you just know that these are characters who take place in that same universe. And I find that just really a terrific way to hopefully bring in new readers. I'm hoping that, there's some people who read this that have never read Fables before that, might find something that they've been looking for all along.
Well, they said they wanted to take, because they would do trade, they would do little miniseries from the Fables universe, but they wanted to change it up a little bit and have Fairest be the title. But then they would put all those miniseries that they have planned, they're just going to put them in this. And then have them come out. Because this would be the first arc. I think the next one is going to be another Cinderella mini. And then it rotates into another story, and it just keeps going that way.
The writer for the Cinderella miniseries, isn't that the one doing iZombie? Isn't that the one who's been doing that?
And yeah, he's the same guy writer Chris Robinson. He's the same one that's doing the Legion Star Trek too. Yeah,
I really enjoy his work. That Cinderella stuff is. I guess I'm assuming that he's going to do the Cinderella story. I would hope he would do the
same team. Yeah, everything stays the same team. He said he and I can't think of the guy. Sean.
Is it McManus?
Yeah. Yeah, that team stays, because that's been the team throughout both the miniseries that they've done. They've only done 2 with Cinderella so far, and so this will be the same deal. They'll stay together. The team will stay together, and they'll just rotate their story in. I think it's about maybe 5 issues. Then the next team, whoever is coming on next, they'll rotate their story in. So.
I like that concept. It's kind of a Fables anthology, because there's a lot of room for that, obviously, and it gives a chance for Willingham to tell brand new stories, but then also to bring on different creative teams to do these type of things. I didn't realize that's what they were doing with this. I'm thrilled, because I really am a big fan of the Cinderella stuff. So to know that we're going to be doing more is great. I love this Woodland guys, and I don't know, I guess in my first read through I didn't catch all the references. My wooden eyes are so much better than your frail meat and jelly eyes. I don't know why I didn't catch what that really meant, because it wasn't until what happens to him later in the issue where, and I guess I'll just throw it out there right now, where he gets his head chopped off, that I realized, wait a minute, he really is wood.
I kind of thought that, but I only thought that because I'm thinking of with Pinocchio, and how they have that magical, wood, enchanted wood, and he said that his wooden eyes are better than human eyes. So that's what made me think, oh, he must be an enchanted, creature.
And here's the thing on my end. I thought this was Pinocchio. When I first read this, I was like, he's sitting in my wooden eyes. I'm like, oh man, this is Pinocchio. I was like, oh, that's cool. I like the change to him. I was kind of excited going, no, this is kind of neat.
So you caught that he was wood. See, I didn't. I'll be 100% honest with you, admitting. I think for me, it was because I've seen Pinocchio in Fables, that I was not thinking it was Pinocchio, and I didn't catch the whole wooden. I feel like a dope because second time through, I'm like, how did I miss this?
Well, when I first read it, because I don't know who the guy is, I'm like, wooden eyes. Then I took a closer look at him, and his face has a grainy look to it. A wood grain type of, structure to it. And I was like, this dude's made out of wood. This guy's a wooden guy. And as soon as I'm thinking Fables, I'm thinking wooden person. I'm like, okay, it's Pinocchio grown up. Well, that's kind of neat. And, considering what happens to him, it's obviously not Pinocchio. And you guys are saying that's not Pinocchio. So I'm like, now I really want to know who this guy is.
Now with this effort, I really like when he's, they have this whole adventure thing going on. Jack of Fables, when it spun off, one of the things that I really liked about it is it distinguished itself from the main Fables book by having an adventure aspect to it. Focusing on Jack, you would get these moments where you'd have like this dialogue, like you're seeing with these two. There's this mystical creature that Alibaba's dodging, and for them, this is like the norm. They're like, he's not fazed by this. This is just something that you do. He has these skills, and you're seeing him utilize them in a way that would make sense for a thief. For a thief to succeed, a true thief, they would have to be able to on the fly adjust. It's actually what I like about Catwoman. The best Catwoman stories have this type of thing, reflexes, where it doesn't matter if she's facing a meta or she's facing a regular human, overwhelming numbers, or a one-on-one situation. She has to react accordingly, and it really is about thinking fast, making that one move that is going to be the difference between you living and you dying. And I like the concept of it's more about escape than it is defeating the opponent. It's, about getting ahead of somebody, getting in and out, zigging and zagging. This Alibaba sequence has that kind of adventure feeling. Like you can feel like an adventure music coming on. Like you feel like there's an intensity going. But then there's that dialogue, inappropriately touched by an angel, the complete $6 million goat, including the Lost episodes. Like all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I was chuckling the whole way through. And yet I felt that sense of just really accessible adventure. That it's one of the things that I think is a trademark of this Fables world is there really isn't a story they can't tell. The characters are so diverse that the book is endlessly. I keep referring to Fables and kind of lumping this in, but the books remain endlessly fresh because there's a lot of opportunity to tell, like if you want to tell an adventure story, well, okay, what characters fit to pull in for that? And you can just do that. And I think for the creator, Willingham and all the other creators, Sturgis and Robertson and everybody else who's been kind of associated with the Fables universe from artistic end as well, have a chance to really do some cool storytelling with just a variety of different options. I've never read a Fable story. I'm like, wow, they kind of already did that. I've never felt that way about this book, and it's had so many issues now. It just not the main title, including everything outside of it. It's just a rich universe.
When you all were reading this, did either of you get the soundtrack of Aladdin going through your head? Because this whole fight running sequence, I'm singing, "You never had a friend like me." I'm just going through the whole route. So I'm just like, oh, we need him to break into song. Come on, do some characters, do some impersonations.
I thought the music, but I didn't necessarily think of a song from Aladdin, but I did think of the music playing in the background, the Disney theme.
Now, did you still feel that way when Toothpick Head lost his head?
Well,
no, it got
not
dark.
so much. It kind of lost the Disney quality with that,
Yeah, it got dark. It got very, and that's what's great about Fables. It starts off. A lot of times I do a story where it'll start off very nice and calm and action adventure, and then you have a character that says, "Oh, I slit their throats earlier. Don't worry about those guys. I slit their throats, and I'm coming to kill you now."
Yeah, it's because I have a little bit of a sick dark sense of humor. I found that funny.
It was funny.
But it's still it's a wonderful balance because as you were talking, Sean, about like the 7 seasons of it inappropriately touched by an angel. I find that as a funny one-liner. Granted, some people may not find humor in that style, but right along with the action sequence, right along with this fun comic, you have something thrown in like that. And it's the shock to the system. You have these cool artistic moments when he's breaking into the camp. And it's limited to no dialogue, but you see him sneaking through. You see him doing his thief stuff. And I thought that was just a cool way of handling it, cool way of showing he actually has skills. He's not just some idiot. He has some training. So I love seeing that get thrown in there as well.
And I also like that what's the worst thing a thief has to face is the truth. And like even with Catwoman, like she can't stand it. Like what does she hate is dealing with what she really is and the truth about what happens. And this is with the imp, he's an information imp. So every lie that he tells, the imp already gets the truth. It gets downloaded right to him. So he can't even lie to him like he wants to.
Do you think he's more powerful than he's letting on?
Yes.
Big time. Yeah, this guy's got some serious mojo going, and I think it's just going to grow exponentially with the others that are waking up. Because he needs Red to wake up, so the other ones will wake up as well. I think it's probably like a spring, summer, fall, winter type of there's got to be an order. There's got to be a special way one can wake the other, and it can feed that way.
Because it seems to be that he can get information from the past and the future.
I love that when I see those queens, and I know I'm kind of jumping ahead to this, but when you see those queens sleeping there, I couldn't help but think to myself, Jack has been with all of them.
Lucky man.
Okay, so these are characters from the Fables universe.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's the funny part is there's constant characters who will appear in different places throughout the world. And he's done, with how long Fables has been around, there's been such a great job of developing. And that's the funny part. How do you take so many characters and develop them so well? That's happened in this universe. And I think it is because at the core, their characters we're all familiar with, at least on some level, but yet they're matured and taken out of the context of being just in storybooks, and they're brought into having to deal with our society. But then we'll see them thrown into and the fact that we've seen them thrown into our society many times throughout history, we just never knew they were there. Because the idea is that we're mundanes, we don't really see them as what they are. In fact, like the imp is a great example, or the Efrit in our world would not be wandering the streets like Alibaba would. He would have been at a farm. There's a place called the Farm that was set aside for the creatures that really couldn't blend in on some level. And I always liked that concept with this series, that they actually address the fact that some of the fables look very, very human and can pass for human, or were turned into human, like Pinocchio. Other characters that, like the Three Little Pigs and stuff like that, wouldn't be wandering the street and things like that, because we, as Mundies, even though we can be kind of dim-witted and they can fool us, we would notice talking pigs.
Yeah, that one wouldn't slip by us. I think we got a close enough attention span for that.
Yeah, if I'm drinking, I don't know. It might slip by.
I loved the layout of this series, and I'm a big fan of when they use narrative boxes to set an atmosphere of, like, in this case, it's a storybook. That when it's not far away and you see like kind of the jagged edges around it, like it's a classic storybook, straight on through to a few minutes and a few miles down the road to days pass. And that added to the adventure aspect to me too. Not only did it feel like you were turning the pages of a storybook, they didn't do it around the whole page. It was just in that little upper left-hand corner. But it just added this sense to me like I'm turning the pages of a storybook. I'm being drawn into... I'm a big fan of fantasy novels, and I love when fantasy novels have those jagged pages and things like that to just kind of give you this sense that it's more of an ancient tome than it actually is. It's a brand new book, but it still feels like it is because it's got the pages that just don't quite match up right. I'm a fan of that type of drawing you into the environment, and I appreciate that the artists do that, and the letterers and everybody who's involved. I don't know who makes those decisions on the narrative, balloons and that, but it was something for me that set an atmosphere, and it was a tiny detail that I thought was worth pointing out because I don't always notice those things. I know that they're there, and I know they're there for the purpose of even subconsciously as readers taking us through an experience. In this issue, I noticed it. I was like, wow, that's really cool. It's like adding to this whole mood and atmosphere. So I thought it was worth noting because I don't always have the opportunity to note it, and it was kind of a cool little tiny detail.
Yeah, it felt like somebody is opening a book and reading to, like, after it's over, you're going to see somebody, like when they have the camera pans back and you see someone actually reading the story and closing the book and kind of looking at the camera and winking at us.
When it said find the girl, kiss the girl, I didn't know that it was going to be the two queens, because I vividly remember the Snow Queen because she was such a major fixture. But,
yeah.
And there's obviously her sister as well. But when he said find the girl and kiss the girl, I'm like thinking of something like, how is this going to go wrong? What happens when he kisses the girl? What's she going to turn into? There was all kinds of things running through my head because I just, on no level did I see this working out in any way, shape, or form for him.
Well, I was thinking Sleeping Beauty. That was my thought.
See, I don't know why I wasn't thinking that. I guess that's one of the funny things. I think because I've seen Sleeping Beauty in this series before too. But then, obviously, with the cover of Fairest, you would get the indication that there is a possibility Sleeping Beauty could turn up. So you're totally right to think that way. I didn't go there, but that would seem like a logical way to go.
Or like Sleeping Beauty, Snow White. That was the way I was going with when he said, "Find the girl, kiss the girl."
I loved the whole fight with Toothpick Head. I mean, that was something to me because I loved that Alibaba again. It's the thief thing for me. I think a lot of times, in movies, you'll see thieves kind of portrayed as being the lesser member of the team. When they do that, they're kind of not quite, they're diminished in some capacity in favor of the main hero. But there is a swashbuckler aspect that would have to happen with these characters. It's the speed, it's the stick and move, it's the, just getting and I liked seeing the fight sequence. I was glad that it was a good, solid battle. It was over a good couple pages that they ended up having their encounter. Those panels were something I really appreciated because even the Efrat at some point is covering, his face up, wondering how this is all going to turn up with the pot that he's hiding under. Again, showing his need to survive. So I don't know. It was something that I really appreciate. I love the idea of this special blade that he had, and it was the confidence of Alibaba was something that really stood out for me too.
Now, these wooden soldiers haven't been introduced into the Fables universe, as far as you guys know, or have they?
They've done wooden or toy soldiers and things like that before in the series. I don't know. I guess I didn't connect him to anything. I got to admit, though, I've been doing a lot of rereading, so I haven't read every single thing Fables. I've got it all. I just haven't gotten to it all.
Yeah, and I mean, what I remember from what I've read so far, it's in this world of magic. They are capable of creating, because Pinocchio, they can create, soldiers. They can create people out of, the wood. They can do and give them form and, and emotion and all that kind of stuff. So I remember that, but I don't know if it's something particular, if he's part of those armies that they deal with the adversary or not. Because it seems like it seemed like familiar, like maybe he did have something to do with that.
Without revealing too much, if you're going to have Pinocchio, that means also the person that has to exist in this world would then be, of course, Geppetto.
Right.
That was going to be my next question because he makes reference to master, creator, and I was immediately then again when we find out he's not Pinocchio because his head gets lopped off, I assumed he wasn't Pinocchio with that. I'm thinking, okay, this master he's referring to would either be Pinocchio continuing on his dad's work or would be Geppetto. And again, I don't know anything about Geppetto in the Fables universe or even Pinocchio for that matter. So that's where I'm connecting this guy is to, member of Geppetto's army or something.
this is not True Love's kiss. I don't know how this can even be deemed as True Love's kiss.
He lied. He had to lie to him.
Because he didn't even kiss her first. He kissed the Snow Queen first. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, if there's any kind of emotional reaction, you know for a fact that he's going to kiss the one that there's at least an interest in first. Mm-hmm. I love the way that played out. I love that he actually kissed the Snow Queen first, because that was immediately added to the whole sense of, okay, what game is being played here? I love when stories kind of give you clues along the way and tease you, and you're left to wonder everything that's going on. You've got that whole, goblin army standing behind her as she's waking up, just knowing that the next issue is just going to be a party. for lack of a better word.
Yeah, he kissed the girl, and he liked it.
This is Jim. Now, having read this, is this a series that you? Because I think obviously Darrell and I are pretty much so locked on that we're going to keep following this monthly. But for you, Jim, I know especially with things like Vertigo and stuff like that, as you mentioned, you tend to go for the DC Universe proper more. I like the diversity. I want a title like this. I need to be reading stuff like this because I love fantasy books. I'm a big Disney junkie anyway, and this isn't Disney, but I mean, to have these characters set then and with a creator doing things that are so drastically different than what Disney would do with them, they've got me. I'm in with all that. Are you seeing yourself getting this monthly, continuing with the monthly? Is it something you're going to go to trade on? Where do you see yourself? Because we got new Vertigo books launching. Where is this falling anywhere for you right now? Or
right now it's on the monthly pull list. Yeah, because as I said, every time I read a story like this, I get into the universe. I'm like, I want more. So I'm definitely going to keep following this for a little while. This, again, it may end up going like the way a lot of my other Vertigo stuff, it may go to trade. Just because I'm already getting 52 issues. Plus the miniseries, plus this thing here, and there's adding more titles onto what I have to read, just time-wise, is difficult. Forget the financial side of it as well. So it's right now there. I'm right now getting it. I'm going to keep getting it monthly, especially because DCBS is doing some really good deals on the Vertigo stuff. So I'm going to keep doing that, and then once that ends, then I'll think about, okay, after the first, story arc's done, then I'll think, okay, do I go to trades on this, or do I keep getting monthly? And there's going to be some thought process going back and forth with it.
Darrell, you mentioned iZombie earlier, and I'm a big fan of that as well. I read that monthly. I'm a Michael Allred fan, and that was actually what drew me to it initially. But then Chris Robertson, I liked when he took over Superman. I thought he did a terrific job there. He was finishing somebody else's storyline, and I thought he did a bang-up job. I really like the work that he's doing with the Cinderella books, and it's a writer who I follow his name now to projects. But it was Michael Allred that initially hooked me into him because I'm a Madman fanatic. I love Michael Allred's Madman work, so that drew me in. How do you and I talk about this all the time, the sheer amount of titles we're reading and stuff like that. How do you budget your time between which books you stockpile and which books you read right away? Like, where does a Fairest fall in that for you? Are you in a certain place with this book yet?
Fairest so far fell into something that I read the first couple of days I get my shipment. Like, I get my shipments once a week from DCBS. So I started doing this to myself. If I don't jump to read a certain book after 5 days of having it, then that tells me I should either drop it or move to trade. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I, added up, because it got to a point where my pile was getting so big. I had like a box full of comics that I haven't read that are just piling up on me, that I had to just stop myself and choose certain books and just wait for other books to trade, do the trade wait thing.
Yeah, I'm the same way on this book. This is one that I read almost immediately in the week that it came out because I love Fables. I'm on board. I've read the prose novel. It's a universe that I really dig. I'm not 100% caught up on it, but it's one of those books that I'm stockpiling and just gradually enjoying the experience of reading it. This is a book I will read as it comes out. just because I like being caught up with it. iZombie, I'm liking being caught up with it. I like when Vertigo titles come out that I'm digging, like this one. Vinyl Underground, I really enjoyed when it came out. I like to have a good couple of Vertigo titles going that I'm able to read and enjoy monthly, while I'm digging some other ones that maybe I jumped on late in trade or I got behind on. And it is what you said. It's like there's certain titles that I'm not getting to in like the first 5 days or so, and then next week's books come out, and I'm budgeting time for my favorites from the next week's books. And I will find that there's certain titles that I end up stockpiling like that I keep because I know I'm very interested in the concept. And 2 or 3 issues down the road, I'll end up reading like a bank of issues together, and there'll be that one issue that just makes me go, wait a minute, I need to be reading this when it comes out. And then there's other ones that just kind of stay stockpiled, and like you said, then they become, for me, I think that becomes my trade, where it's a book that I know, okay, I like reading this in arcs. It just kind of falls that way. I end up getting the singles just because I've been getting the singles, but I ended up reading and paying attention to when that arc finishes, and that really is how I budget my time. And it lets me know, do I have any room to add any more titles? Because if there's coming a point where I've got too big of a stockpile, then there comes a point where I'm saying, I don't know if I have room to add another title, or maybe something needs to go, not because I don't like it, but because I want to make room for that brand new. Fairest is one of those I would make room for.
Yeah, and it's only, I think this first arc is probably 6 issues, and then it goes to something else, so it's kind of cool that you can, your 6 issues come in, you can, sit down and read those 6 issues when they're done, and choose to either go on to the next story or not, if it's something that you're not into.
Jim, for you, does an anthology like with this type of thing, because you mentioned the DC Universe proper, and one of the things that's pretty consistent with most of the DC Universe proper is that you're going to read a title and it's a continuous, ongoing, monthly story. And I know your focus a lot of times is on the continuity stuff that keeps going, versus titles that might be side stories or limited series. You tend to focus more on the main series in most cases. When you get a title like this, it's an anthology. Is that something that, you're like, what is this? You talk about your palate cleansers. Does this fall into a palate cleanser category for you, or is it kind of I'm more comfortable stockpiling this because it's in arcs? I don't know how that works for you. Because for me, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this monthly. I'm on board. I'm excited and all that, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the same reading experience. How do you approach books like this?
Well, this is definitely a palate cleanser because it is such a different variety and a different style. And as I said, I know next to nothing about the universe, but I still enjoyed the book and I still enjoyed the read through. And after that last page, seeing her wake up and the goblin army and just even the look on the little imp's face, I was like, okay, the next issue is going to be funny. The next issue is going to be interesting. I want to read that next issue. So it is pulling me in and is getting me to enjoy it. But just how do I approaching this an anthology for me? This type of title, being an anthology wouldn't matter too much to me. It wouldn't affect my choice on to keep it or drop it, because the keeping and dropping for this type of book has never been about quality. I've always, when I was reading Jack, I was like, man, this is a funny book. I was laughing at his references to the readers. I was just his commentary about to just write general real society and the real world and whatnot. So I enjoy that, and it's something as I'm reading it, I keep telling myself, man, I should be getting more of this stuff because this is really kind of on my this is a type of style that I enjoy, but it just. There's always just something that stops me, and it's usually the fact that I've run out of time reading. When you still have books left over, and the next week's shipment shows up, I'm like, I gotta do something about this because I can't spend as much as I'd like to spend all day, Saturday and Sunday reading. I can't do that. I have other stuff I got to take care of, so time's limited, and it's usually these are the books that get dropped because. Even though it's something I enjoy, I just got to make the call, and sometimes you just got to pull the trigger.
I always laugh about that because whenever I hear people saying that I'm reading all these awful books, I'm like, how much time do you have? That my problem is never that I'm reading all these awful books. My problem is I never can get to all the books that I really want to read. It's there's a stockpile of books that just ends up building up just because of what you're mentioning. I really have to budget my time out, and it really is an issue of, like you said, a book. I have books that are stockpiled right now. Again, not because of quality. It's because of the fact that I just don't have the time to get to them. And I really genuinely like them. They're still in the stack because I know I'm going to hit that weekend or something, or that day off, or that evening where just for whatever reason it's a little lighter. There's maybe nothing on TV. My wife's busy. Where I'm going to read like 3 or 4 extra books, and it's going to be that book that I've like, okay, this book's been sitting here. I'm so excited to finally be able to sit down and read it, and usually that book ends up delivering during that time. I don't have a lot of room in my stack of the book that I'm like, boy, this is painful to read. I just don't have that time. And I just feel there's too much quality. I don't get it.
I don't read it. I mean, I know people complain about the Bat books, and they're like, do we need another Bat book? And I'm like, if you don't want to read it, don't buy it. Like, if you just want to read the Bat book by Scott Snyder, just buy that. But there are other people that like Detective. There are other people that like the Dark Knight, there are other people that like Batman and Robin, and then there are people that like all of them. They're all got their place, and if people are not enjoying it, they will not buy the book, and it'll have to end.
See, for me, when you mention things like Batman and stuff like that, and Fables fits in. It's actually, the comparison's really great. Do we need another Fables book? Yeah, because this stuff's really good. It's as long as the material that's being delivered is of a quality, and they're different. Fairest is very different from reading the Fables proper book. And that's one of the things that I really liked immediately out of the issue. It gave me back something that I've been missing since Jack of Fables. And I think the cool part of this being, I didn't realize, like, I'm glad you mentioned that it was going to be like kind of an anthology style thing, Darrell, before, because I think there's a lot opportunity then to tell a lot of different kinds of stories than we're used to seeing in the main book. And this was something I've been missing since Jack hasn't had his own book.
All right.
This was something I liked about Jack of Fables. This Alibaba thing has that vibe to it. Yeah, there's room for more books because of this type of thing. It's a good way to handle the miniseries thing. I'm hoping this sells better for them than the minis did. And I'm not saying that I don't know what the numbers were on the minis or how that works. I'm endlessly fascinated with Vertigo, and I always want to know, what do they actually look at? Because I think for Vertigo in particular, because you've touched on it before and Jim touched on it before, I think there is a comfort level for Vertigo. And it was something, I was at Vertigo panels where you're basically told at the panel that they target not just the comic fan, but also heavily the bookstore crowd. I know that was more, coming off of the Sandman era and stuff like that, but if they're not thinking that way mentally with Vertigo, I think that there's a boat that's being missed there. And if those numbers aren't being taken into account, and the publicity towards the people who would be a part of that number are not being taken into account, they're really missing a different sort of audience. Because I do think the Vertigo audience is people like us, but it's also a different sort of crowd. And there's something that's neat about it. It's a coffee shop crowd, too. I honestly would love to sit in a coffee shop and talk Fairest with somebody, while sipping a Starbucks. And I think that's a different experience than sitting in a comic shop or doing a podcast like we are and talking Fairest.
Yeah, it's very, because I work at the library, and it's just very library friendly. We keep that we have over 120 branches, and all of them have copies of Fables from Volume 1 on, because they keep it in stock. So it's important to have that, and people really gravitate towards this book when they have someone that's not into reading comics on a regular basis, but they kind of want to dip their toe into it, and this is the first thing that they're given a lot of the times.
I think there's been a lot of series from Vertigo that lend themselves very well to opening the eyes of an audience member who isn't a superhero person, and they think that that's all that comics are. And I like the fact that there's that opportunity to still have the same qualities that you get in the Fables books that you would get in a superhero universe story. There's an ongoing world that's been richly developed, that you feel like that there's events in the stories that have impact that could possibly reoccur, or characters that will pop up elsewhere later that you have a history with. And, like this conversation, Jim, you didn't know the Queens, and, there's characters that are popping up in this that we're very familiar with, and what Pinocchio and Geppetto and our own experiences with how we thought that may or may not relate to this story. Great examples of how you can have a discussion with a variety of different experiences with the Fables universe and have a different coolness factor with the continuity. This is where I'm a fan of continuity. The fact that this world has a continuity to it, but it's accessible at the same time, I think is something that's rich. And I think comics in general, people miss the boat the anti-continuity people, I think, miss the boat when it's cool for characters to have a history and there's something rich about them, and we can have that debate over, is this Pinocchio's relative or is it just somebody else, from a magical tree? I don't know.
Well, I know Vertigo, the last couple cons, they've been, I've been reading things that they've said about it, and Karen Berger, and how they're trying to find a balance for, their books and to kind of get people in the marketplace to check this out. Like, it gets forgotten in the DC 52, relaunch. Everything else kind of gets, forgotten in the conversation because, everybody's so excited or trying to find out what is this and, what is Superman and how is Batman changed. And so Vertigo kind of, got pushed aside. Not that they're not, and they're doing good work. It's just that people are just not, seeing it on the shelf, or they're not asking about it, or they don't even know what Fables is. They just know that Fables is a long running series, and it's like, should I even bother trying to jump into it now, or do I have to know a whole bunch of stuff? And Fairest, they kind of said that this is a way that we can get the reader who isn't familiar with Fables to check out a particular story arc, and they don't have to know the whole history of Fables up until now.
And that could be on an arc by arc basis. You could then see. I look at this as being a series potentially where there's gifting material for me, to give to friends. And be able to say, okay, this is somebody who'd be interested in this, this, because the Cinderella stories are so James Bondish.
Oh, I love that.
And the cool part about those is there's friends of mine I know I could probably buy those stories for, just because I know they're into that type of spy material and that type of thing, where I'm like, oh, this might be a different sort of story that they might actually check out and read a comic, where they wouldn't normally do that because they're into that kind of novel and that kind of story. So I'm looking at, an anthology like this as being something where during the holidays, because I like to give comics as gifts to people, and particularly when I know that they're things that people haven't read or wouldn't normally approach, just because it's a fun gift. It's something that's a little bit different. I find myself nowadays doing a lot more gift cards and things just because it's hard. I'm finding with a lot of my friends it's very hard to shop for them. But besides a gift card, sometimes I like to have that other novelty thing, that other fun thing that's just kind of a little bit different, that feels more personal. And comic material like this really has that kind of vibe, especially when if you personalize a choice of a story arc to the person you're giving a gift to. Maybe they'll page through it, maybe they'll read it, and it'll be something where they'll go, wow, that was kind of a neat gift, and I kind of remember it, and it was, my thing that kind of stands out. Especially when you got series with artwork like this, how can you not turn the page of Fairest and be captivated by just the brilliant artwork? Even if you don't, you have to read the story, but I can't imagine not doing that. But even if you're, just a page through it to just be drawn into the just beautiful, majestic scenery and stuff that's in there, this stuff is really just well done, and that has to draw people into the story. But this is something that I wouldn't hesitate to give to a gift to a lot of people who wouldn't normally be somebody that would consider buying comics for. Just because I know they wouldn't read superhero material, they just immediately turn their nose up to it. This one, though, I think I can get away with, and especially if it's done in a nice hardcover, it would make a nice gift and a nice book. I don't know, it's kind of a cool series. Vertigo is one of those that I do think has a lot of opportunity to reach audience bases that you wouldn't expect. And is this coming? I didn't even check. Do they do these day and date digital? Do we know?
As far as I know, they even made a new app for Vertigo.
Yeah. You're right. No, you're 100. So they are.
Yeah.
They did on the source blog. I saw that they were doing the new app. Good call. Which I'm glad to see. And I think it's important to have an app that separates Vertigo. Not separates it in the sense that, because there's, in the DC universe, there's a Green Lantern app. And I'm sure you can probably buy all this material through the DC app. I've never looked to see. I know for a fact you could buy Fables and things like that through the DC app, because I've done some of those special sales where they've done them, and it's been through the DC app. Yeah.
You could do Cosmicology. You can go at DCBS. You can go through. I mean, they're trying their best to make it available to people.
I'm glad you mentioned DCBS when you were talking about that, because one of the things that I love, first of all, I love that they bundled the first issues of these series together, but they didn't stop there. They're doing what they did with the New 52. They're giving people a few issues to pre-order each of these titles to see if they like them at that 75% off, which I think is like super cool. The other thing is, you mentioned getting the app through them. I encourage anybody to, I'll obviously hopefully use sponsors like DCB Service because they support the podcast community. But also, a lot of local comic shops are doing these Comixology links too. And it's really, I don't do any of my purchasing through the app. I do it all from those websites just because it gives credit to that particular site. I'm not spending anymore doing it that way. But it's building up a partnership with them and Comixology. So I really encourage people to do that. And then they're accessible first of all, on your computer, on your app, anywhere. So please consider doing that with your purchases, because it does help out those other sites for them to have that kind of partnership there. And I'm a fan of the whole Comixology thing doing that. I hope that it's financially working out in some way as this continues to grow, that it's becoming more profitable as time goes on for comic shops, for comic creators, for really everybody, the companies, everyone involved. Because, this digital thing is really interesting, because I think at this point it's still a major feeling out process. How to properly use this, how to properly market it, how to target new audience from it. Because I still firmly feel this is all being targeted to mainly people who are already reading comics versus a new audience base. And I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. And admittedly, it's in its infancy. But I think if it's really going to be successful digital on any level, it's got to be targeted to a new audience. And I think books like this, I think a Vertigo app, that's a great opportunity to reach a new audience, because I think Vertigo lends itself. First of all, I think Vertigo's not as overwhelming when you go there. It's a smaller, you can pick up individual titles. You don't need to, they're not all interconnected. So I think there's some opportunities for people to say, hey, I just want to follow this book. Kind of like a magazine stand, which a lot of these platforms, both the Android and the Apple one, have, newsstand features where you can do that. I think it's something that people who are more of a casual reader would be more comfortable approaching and doing. I'd like to see them do subscription-based models for some of these on digital.
I hope they do. I do like that they're doing bundles for this, especially for Vertigo stuff, because a lot of times these series kind of get, they kind of get lost in the crowd of books that come out every month. So if you can hit that button and buy the bundle, which is what I did with DCBS, and make sure I get all the new series.
Now, question. Have you guys heard anything I know you guys have been to the same cons and things I have, but also different cons that I have over the last year or so. Do we have any idea how Vertigo looks at numbers? I mean, do they look exclusively at the monthlies, kind of like what it seems to be for, the regular DC comics, or do they look at the trades? Because I guess I've asked at multiple cons. I can never seem to get a straight answer on that. And it's really something I've always felt that Vertigo was a different approach, that they looked at the trades and that was something that was considered. But that's a question when I've asked it always seems to be avoided.
Because they're not sure. And you know what? I know that listening to like Bob Wayne and from DC, when they do interviews, they don't want to say out loud that we are looking at the trade sales for this particular title, because they don't want that to be a cue to people to go, okay, well, I won't worry about it. I'll just wait for the trade and not do the single issues. And then you don't want to say, you don't want to negate the trade out loud, because then you don't want to, discourage people that, want to buy it single issue. So I think they don't want to say either way what they do, because it's still hard. They're still trying to figure out how to get as many people as possible to support these titles. And then at the same time, they do look at the sales, because stuff like Scout constantly gets bought, and even the 100 Bullets, which is done, that series has been it ended a year or two ago, and it's still coming out. Like they're just resoliciting another hardcover special edition for 100 Bullets. So for some series, it works that way. They can do trades, because the trades are just so popular that it does save a book from being canceled. But then there are certain other titles that, even when they come out, in trade, they just don't make the money back, and they have to, kind of shorten the run that they originally were going to do.
I read from Marvel, Stephen King's Dark Tower series. I read the novels. I'm a huge fan of the book series. I'm a Stephen King fan in general. But when they started doing that series, I originally was reading the singles, but because of doing the show, my monthly reading is very focused on books that we could potentially be doing on the podcast. I tend to prioritize that just because, this is the type of show that we do. We have an audience base, so I tend to, I've got to prioritize that because, I'm taking that into consideration. So I like getting those in the hardcover, and I'm really enjoying reading them that way. I think Marvel has an interesting approach to collected editions. A lot of books seem to go right to those Marvel Select, and you get these, really high-quality hardcovers on the glossy paper and things that have been released. And I feel like when I'm doing that I'm supporting the book. And I think that's always, as a fan, what we want to know is, and I think it's sometimes dangerous to not let fans know that on certain series that trades will support it, hardcovers will support it, because I do think there's a fan base out there, and I'm one of them, that there's certain series I really like getting in hardcover. I really like the format. I think it looks great. If it's something that I'm like, I don't have time to read it monthly, but I want to get on board, I want to enjoy it, or I jumped on late. You mentioned books like 100 Bullets, Why the Last Man, stuff like that. They've released them in trade. They've released them in hardcover. Then they've released them in those year-long hardcovers, that are like those big, the bigger, more compendium volumes that they're releasing that, have extras and that type of thing. Look how many times Sandman's been collected.
Yeah.
And, then released in absolutes, and now they're doing that annotated version. I think there's, new audiences to be from every different avenue and every different approach to releasing these books. There's new audiences to be released every time. And I do think there is an opportunity to cultivate a hardcover collector. I know there's not to cultivate. There is hardcover collectors out there. A lot of people who just like waiting for those, and they like to get those nice, handy volume. But I think there's also a frustration for those collectors when that series, all of a sudden, that they've been collecting all the way through, is canceled, and they never get the completion of it. They're never able to continue reading it that way, and then to find out that your numbers may not count towards being a fan of the series. Right. I think there's really, it would be great as fans to know how they look at that. And you're right. There's a danger if they start telling us that we jump ship to grab trades in a certain title and things like that, and then how would that affect the book? I don't know. It's interesting catch-22.
Well, Vertigo, at least for Vertigo, because they don't have a lot of titles, they are able to end them. Like even if it's not exactly when they want to end a story, they still give them enough time that they get the most complete story that they can get.
Yeah, I've never felt like a Vertigo series, and I haven't read every single Vertigo series, but I've read a lot of Vertigo. I don't remember reading a Vertigo series where I felt like I was left hanging at the end. There were things that obviously the creators weren't able to wrap up because, like you're saying, it was a series that ended, like Vinyl Underground. I threw that example out earlier. That ended. I was glad they had an ending. Even though it was clear that there was so much more they could have done with the book. I really dug the series, and I was glad to see that they gave an ending to it. I think that's really important, though, and I think it's really important regardless of whether or not you're doing a Vertigo title or you're doing a regular superhero universe title, because I think that builds loyalty as well. When you know, okay, if my book's wrapping up in 7 or 8 issues, at least the creative team's going to have a chance to wrap up the storyline that they were going to do. I think that's really something moving forward comic companies have to be aware of, that you want to leave people feeling, even if they're disappointed that their book's being canceled, you want to leave them feeling satisfied that they had something that was complete. Even if you approach it as a mini-series kind of ending, there should be some kind of wrap-up to the dangling plot threads that were there that are major ones. You know, the ones that weren't quite developed yet, then you don't need to, I don't think, wrap those up. But any of the major ones that have been going on, to leave us hanging with those when that happens, I think at this day and age is pretty unexcusable.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's I don't know, it's a hard thing because you want to give a creator time to tell the story they want to tell, but when sales are just not supporting it, you know, it's what can you do?
I think, though, my point is, though, I think that fan that's leaving that title, you want them to jump on something else that you are publishing. And I think in order to do that, you need to treat them, you know, as a thank you for reading it, with an ending that at least is like you're talking about, where it's, you know, maybe the creative team didn't get to wrap it up where they wanted to, but at least give them like an issue, even an issue, to kind of give something satisfying to the fans that have been reading it, so that way they can feel like their book wrapped up and you know that they mattered for reading it as long as they did. And I think it's true no matter how long the series is. I think you need to give that nowadays, because what's the point in reading these books if we don't feel like we're getting stories? Even within our regular monthlies that are continual ongoings, they have many arcs in them that wrap up all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to need something to wear in a very big truck.
Sure. Anything else?
I'll need some guys. Not these guys, because, well, they're kind of dead.
Well, next issue is going to be Green Arrow number 7. The writer is Ann Nochetti. The artist is Harvey Tolobai, with Richard and Tanya Horry as the colorists. Letterer is Rob Lay. Cover by Howard Porter, with Hi-Fi on the cover color. Katie Stewart is the assistant editor. Joe Cavalieri is the editor. And weapons consultant was Raphael Pearson Santi.
This is one of those titles that I've been digging Green Arrow all along. It's been one of those books that, because it's such a relaunch for the character, you know, I have in my mind who Ollie Queen is and what his history is. That book of Green Arrow, that character of Green Arrow, even though he died and came back, it still was basically the same continuity for so long that this is the first time that we've had like a real tried and true relaunch of Green Arrow for years. You know, it was one of those characters that even with all the events that happened, his history just kind of always got folded in. I think for me, as a longtime Green Arrow fan, it took me a little bit of time to wrap my head around the creative direction for the character. I don't mean that in any way as a negative. It's something that as every issue's come out of this series, right from issue 1, I've been enjoying more and more getting to know Green Arrow in this. It was a book that I have had high hopes for. This was a creative team when they came on board. I really, first issue in, because I enjoyed her work on Daredevil so much, I was really, really excited because I was worried because I was liking the creative team that had already been there before. And anytime you're going to switch that up for me so early, I'm very concerned with the direction of the book until you tell me that this writer's going to be coming on board. And I'm like, oh, good. It's somebody who's going to have, you know, similar sensibilities as far as the type of story that should be told for Green Arrow and what the character's all about. But that's my thoughts. I thought this was a great first issue for a new creative team. Guys, what is your thoughts? So you don't have to agree with me. Darrell, what did you think going in?
Well, I came from the same thing with you. Like I was enjoying J.T. Crewell's original run, and then they changed the team, and I wasn't too sure about it. I wasn't even sure I was going to buy it. And then when they announced who it was, I was a Daredevil fan. So I said, well, I'm definitely going to check it out now because I like the team, the writer that's going to be on it. So I came into it, a little excited to read something from her because I haven't read anything from her in a long while in terms of, comics. So I don't know. I've read this issue and it felt like so far the previous 6 issues that I've been reading, it kind of felt like this is a different character a little bit to me. He seemed to revert even more into, being kind of flaky more than he was established in the first arc to me.
Well, we'll talk about that as we go along.
Okay.
Because I think there's a certain thing that happened here, and I don't know if we're reading it the same way, because where that flakiness came from. But you know what? Before we go into that, Jim, what were your thoughts on it? Because that's interesting. Very interesting approach. Go ahead, Jim.
And I know what you're talking about, Sean, because my first read through, I was kind of exactly on the page with Darrell, and then when you get through my second read through, when you find out the stuff at the end, you're like, okay, he was drugged. That's why he had those moments of flakiness, and there was a little bit going, okay, that's kind of explains some of the characterizations and some of the differences. Because first reading through, when he's sitting on top of the rooftop there, and he's just, he needed to vent. And at first I was like, what the heck? I'm like, okay, this guy's just venting. He's, we all have to do it at times. This is him doing it, and I thought that was kind of a neat thing. But the way he was dealing with his coworkers, the way he was dealing with Team Arrow, and just everything, how he was handling it, I was like, this is not the same Ollie. And then we find out later that the little sirens, little skylarks, drugged him, pheromones, and all the various whatnot they hit him with. I'm like, that's what tweaks his personality. That's what changed him. I'm like, okay, now that we got this, I'm liking this. I'm curious where this is going, because you guys are talking about her as from Daredevil. I never read any of that. I had no idea who she was, and I only calmed down because when we were in New York and they announced she was the writer, a bunch of people cheered. And then I was talking to other people like, oh, yeah, she had a great run on Daredevil. I'm like, oh, okay. So that calmed me down. I'm like, okay, this is somebody who's actually written before, but I had no idea of the name at all. So to me, it was somebody brand new coming in, and they were giving her a Green Arrow. I was like, huh? What are you guys doing? You had a great team on it. So, this is, for me, I come into this with a lot of what's going on, who is this? This is my introduction to her.
The issue, it's funny, Jim, you mentioned the second read-through. I'm with you in the sense that, because I didn't realize, we see him get hit on page 3 with those darts. I wasn't registering the first time through that I read this, that the darts were having a major effect on him emotionally. They actually led to the trap that he winds up in later, the behavior with the company. Because I went back through and I read again, I'm like, wait a minute, none of that behavior with his company starts until after he was hit with the darts. Mm-hmm. So it was Darrell. I very much had the same reaction to you, which is why when you were mentioning that, I'm like, oh, I really do want to talk about this, because I'm like, I so had that emotion. I'm like, wait, Ollie's going in this direction, and what we'd kind of established him as, kind of going this way, and it was funny how the darts hitting in, and then the girls having that conversation with him. They don't reveal themselves until the darts have actually started already working on him.
You know what? And you said it made me go back when in Fairest, when you didn't see the wooden eyes comment, it didn't click. It didn't really click to me that it was because he was affected by and they kept saying that they did pheromones. I mean, and I know that they said, they even tell him that we kind of gave you hints to what was going on, and it still didn't click in my head that this is why he seemed so different than what he was before.
And he's hit by a lot of those darts, because the darts were in his arm. Mm-hmm. The darts were in his neck. They were actually in his cheeks, which is one of the things that I really love when you start seeing, the bird and all that stuff in there, that page with the foosh. You can actually see the darts located on both sides of his face. So the sheer number of those that came down in the balloons, he was able to deflect some of them, but they did such overwhelming numbers when you see him in that sequence where he's flipping around, that there was no way his body wouldn't be pretty heavily dosed with that stuff, which is that it changes the tone of what was actually happening to him.
Yeah, and I do like his trick arrows. I'm glad that they've gone back to that style, because that shielded arrow that he shoots out that takes out a bunch of them, that was a neat little thing.
I like the nod to a weapons consultant.
Yeah.
That was something, because one of the things I've enjoyed about this series right from issue 1 has been this idea that, you're taking Green Arrow into a modern age. I like that they took the elements that I really liked from Smallville and made them a part of DC continuity, where he's younger, he uses more modern tech, and, he's a little bit hipper to today's... Because Ollie, growing up, to me, was always kind of, hip to his generation at the time. He was very much social conscious, he was very aware of what was going on in the media and the world, and those are the type of stories you got with Ollie. To do that today, you really need to take that character concept at its core, and I thought that was something this series has done very well since the beginning, was, bring him into modern day and make him feel relevant to today and the type of character. What did you guys think of the art? Because that's something that also changed drastically, was we've got this new artist who is taking the art style in a new direction as well. I really greatly liked the art before. What did you guys think about this art?
Well, I mean, Dan Jurgens is, I can't even express how much I always enjoyed, Dan Jurgens' art, from everything from Superman to he's done Thor, he's done everything, Justice League. So him being on the book, I would have bought Green Arrow just for Dan Jurgens' art, period.
Yeah.
And then add on top of that, I like JT Kroll as a writer, so that was just a plus for me. So I love that. But this art, you could tell it's a European style, and I like it though. It's action, it shows the action very well. It's more dynamic. It's colorful, which is Green Arrow. It brings out the color, the green, which is him. That's always been his trademark, is that green. When he's on every panel, it really stands out, so that he's always the star of every page that he's on. So I like that. And even the facial expressions are, I love how they draw him. They make him look they're slowly making him look a little bit older, because he looked really young in the first arc. But he looks just a touch older now, but not too much. So I like how they're doing that.
I like he looks a little rougher, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jim, what about you with the art?
Well, I'm getting adjusted to it. There was a dramatic shock because it was new writer, new artist. I was like, whoa, this doesn't look like the book I had before. And, but I started, again, this was second, third read through is where I started appreciating some of the artwork a little bit more and started getting adjusted to it. There's a lot of really cool, background landscape artwork that's done, that when they hit them with those millions of tiny little arrows, I spent a little while looking and seeing them all over the place. So I like that type of attention to detail, and especially some of the later sequences. They really get a good, comfortable vibe with it, and it, by the end of the book, I'm okay with the artwork. I'm okay with the changes. I'm okay with the look, because there was still enough of what I enjoyed about Green Arrow, what I enjoyed about the title. I mentioned before the colors, they really popped and really boom, keeps you going there. But there was enough of this still felt like Green Arrow to me. It still looked like him. The story read like him. I was like, okay, changes, but it's still the same guy.
I think for me, one of the things that worked, I think, first of all, knowing the writer, I walked in highly anticipating this because of the writer. I really like her work. So, and Daredevil's the reference that I go to. The Daredevil run was just terrific for me. I'm a big Daredevil fan. I thought that was super cool. So, hearing that she was coming on board, I walked in anticipating it. I will admit the same thing, kind of like what you're saying, Jim. When I first saw the art, because I really dug the art before on the series, so I was very into it. I'm like, this is really sharp. It feels very Green Arrow. I was super into it. I didn't know if the cover art was going to be the interior art when we originally saw that preview picture. I liked the cover art right from the get-go. That was something when they showed the little tease for this, and we saw the 3 girls fighting with Green Arrow on there. Which, here's the funny part. When I saw the 3 girls on there, I don't know why, when I saw the cover preview, that I wasn't registering them more for when the story began. I was totally not thinking of myself, oh, he's going to be fighting 3 girls, and you know, they're triplets, and they're going to be they've got some kind of, you know, connection that way or anything like that. I don't know why I never saw that coming, because I really liked the cover. But when we got to the interiors, one of the things that I was noticing was, you know, okay, this is very different art. I needed to get used to it, because I was very into what was coming before. I did find by the end of the issue, I really liked the art, and a lot of what Darrell was mentioning as far as action, all that was great. I think it always helps for me if there's going to be an art shift, that it's happening when there's a writer shift, there's a creative shift, because that kind of helps me feel like, you know, there was that team was with the old writer. It's kind of a creative shift. If you're going to make a change, this is the time to do it, because there's a natural transition. So I always have a preference if there's a reason to change art and you can coordinate it this way, it's the time to do it, because, like, okay, this is a jump on points, brand new thing and all that. And by the end of the issue, I was really into what was being presented here. It was funny how that first page, Jim, where he shows him with the umbrella arrows, I was thinking about our discussion we had on Green Arrow when we were talking about the previous series. You remember you were talking about how much you liked his boot design with the knee pads and all that stuff? I really felt it was showcased in this artwork. Especially, you know, you can actually clearly see that there is armor right where the knee would be, where a lot of my concerns with that hole in the center, I was wondering how effective that is. It's funny how, like, those tiny little details you mentioned earlier came back to me in this issue. And I found that just for some reason in this art, they stood out more to me. And I think it was because we got more of these close-ups of him in those poses. And, like, I don't know that I have a preference between the 2 art styles with the book. And I think it's because I attach them so much to the runs of the particular creators across the board who are associated with it. I thought this was really sharp, though. And I thought the new villains, in particular, the girls, who I didn't know were going to be villains, I thought partway, like, for my first read-through, because I was with Darrell, I totally didn't, and Jim, sounds like we were all on the same page here, I didn't get that, like, his behavior was driven by his pheromones. I was totally into this whole, okay, Ollie, I want to smack upside the head.
Yeah.
But I'm liking the idea of these girls being maybe his new Speedy. Like, maybe we're putting together a Team Arrow where, you know, these girls on some level are going to be his confidants, and, you know, when he's on missions, each one of them is going to pilot vehicles, or, you know, one's going to be a field person, one's going to be the vehicle person, one's going to be I started seeing them in different roles. I was totally swerved by them.
Well, I knew they were bad guys. I knew they were villains from the moment get-go. I just it didn't connect the pheromones and the clues that they gave. You know, I didn't connect that. But I knew from the beginning that this was all a setup. And especially, you know, when you see him, you know, on the plane and they're distracting him on the plane very nicely, I'm like, dude, why can't you see it's a trap? And that was the thing. Another thing. I was like, come on, why can't Ollie see this as a trap? I see it so clearly. And we get the answer later why Ollie didn't see it as a trap. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, and again, that's why second read through was, you know, it was a much more appreciation of just the subtleties, the changes, the fact that we did have those changes in Ollie's personality. And it fit. And I'm like, okay, this is why this guy doesn't see this coming. All right.
The plane is where I started to see them that way, too. I should clarify that. But I will totally 100% throw myself under the bus and admit they had me swerved. Because I liked their whole bit where they were, like, kind of doing an audition for him or an interview with him, where they were showing the, you know, little tiny arrows and showing the little things like, hey, you know, you have trouble up close, here's this thing we invented, you know, really saying this is the only way to get close to you, to get noticed by you. I started seeing the possibility that, okay, maybe these girls are on the up and up. You know, they're going to be a little out there. They'll be as Harley Quinn or something. But, you know, I was kind of into the whole thing. And when they were on the plane together, and then we see the sequence you were mentioning, Jim, you know, where he goes off with one of them, I'm like, oh, no. That's exactly where the dead giveaway was for me. But I will admit I was totally swerved by that. And I actually liked that I was. I thought it added something to my first read-through experience that then later I'm like kicking myself in the head, like, how did I not notice this? But that was my experience in the beginning, because I was really, I think Darrell, I with you in the sense that I'm like, what is he doing? Why is he giving up his job? It's like Ollie to be aloof like that. That's part of his history. That's part of the character where, he will all of a sudden on a whim, go off and do something else because he's gotten bored or, that's part of his history. Or, there's a social reason where he's like, I can no longer devote myself to the company. I need to devote myself to being an agent of change. Usually it's some tragic event in his life that causes him to lead a divergent path versus what we saw here, which I'm like, wow, okay, they're going a really different route with him on this end, with trying to be Green Arrow all the time. And I love that it turned out to be the pheromones, and I'm going to be curious to see what challenges this is going to make for him coming down the road. Because here's my question. Did that Emerson guy have a factor in this? Because he benefits from what the girls did.
That's true. Now, if I remember right, he was a friend of his father's, right? Emerson.
I think so, to a certain extent.
Did they mention, like, that? I could have sworn that they mentioned that he was either friends with his father or he knew his father, at least.
I think he was at least with the company back then. There's more of a longevity to it.
Uh-huh.
But in Emerson's case, it's really clear. Because I guess I don't take him as being a full-blown friend of the father. I agree with you, Darrell. There's a history there. Like, he's been with the company far longer than everybody else, including Ollie. But when he's so busy trying to have Ollie declared dead so he can take over, that it doesn't seem like something that a friend of the father would do, if that makes sense. That maybe they were friends and were seeing the truth of their relationship, so to speak.
Yeah, because he did say how, like, I knew you. The jabs, he kind of gave him a jab to kind of smack some, trying to snap some sense into him. Because he mentioned that his father would not approve of your behavior, especially of the company. And that made me think, well, maybe he was friends with his father to say something like that.
Yeah, I definitely think if they weren't friends, there's a history there where he knows the father. They worked together. He was a part of his father's company, which I think is a very likely thing. I don't know. I love. It's funny. I actually care. I thought this issue developed something really well where Emerson, I'm definitely convinced that Emerson's not to be trusted. I don't know if it's just a matter of that he thinks he's better at running the company than Ollie, or if it's something more where he's so willing to make a power play that it's okay for Ollie to disappear.
Yeah.
See, I took it was more of a business thing. It wasn't a friendship with the father. He just worked for the company, and it's kind of a personal power thing, and he wants the company. And it's not about, any, noble purposes or friendship or loyalty to the father. It's solely about he wants the power that would come with being, the head muckety muck of a company like Q-Corp.
I think what Darrell's saying there, though, is that there's a longevity that Emerson has had with Q-Corp. Is that where am I reading you right?
Yeah, because he kept, just telling him, like, we built this company, I've been here for whatever amount of time, and you seem to throw everything away so easily. Like, you kind of blow off how much we put into the company. He kept, like, throwing that in his face constantly, that we're working hard and we've been here, and you're just, you're not appreciating what, the history of the company. And that kind of made me, I don't know if I don't trust him either, but it also, it made me think that he could also be saying these things because he kind of wants to pull for him because he knew him as a kid, and he just thinks that since he doesn't know that he's Green Arrow, he kind of thinks that he's not living up to his potential.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a longevity with the company, but I don't think it is the pulling for Ollie. I really think this guy's one of the main bad guys, and I wouldn't even be surprised if he had something to do with Skylarks or something to do with if he played it even further, like did more of a evil genius type of story later down the line.
But it could be what you said too, Jim. First of all, I'm thinking that's what's going on too. But it could also be the motivating factor that's driving him is I've devoted my whole life to this company.
Yeah.
I worked with his dad. I really should have been the one rather than the whippersnapper. I should have been the one heading the company. This is something I deserve. I earned my spot. Why am I not being given it? And there's a bitterness there with an Ollie taking over, or Ollie's role. Because Ollie really taking over is a strong word because he's not really in charge of the whole kit and caboodle. It's really like his own little area, and they've already put somebody in place in previous issues to kind of oversee him there and act as his veto, which I found totally interesting as well. I like the power play in his company. I think it's really important with Green Arrow is that you take this company, and this is only going to add to the power play. You take his, which is why I do agree that there's a possibility maybe Emerson knows he's Green Arrow and is utilizing that. I just don't know. I don't know how this is going to play out. I like that I see more than one option with what's going on with Emerson. Yeah. It could be just straight the company, and the fact that he's dropped off the planet because of his role at Green Arrow is just a happy coincidence. I agree that I don't think he's a good guy. I don't know. I find him interesting, though. It's something this company, I think, has been developed since the first issue. It's developed well in the DC universe to the point where you see that on billboards all over the place, which is something I really dig. I like the whole universe aspect of it because something you're usually used to seeing Superman related, seeing a lot of Lex related things, and now to see not only stuff from Lex but to see stuff from Ollie's company and to see branding in the universe of different businesses that are associated with the heroes. Michael Holt's companies and things like that popping up, which I really enjoy seeing as well. I think it's a nice editorial and creative attention to detail that makes us feel like a shared universe. Like it's great to see on a taxi cab a advertisement for Holt Industries. Mm-hmm. I like that kind of stuff. It's a nice little Easter egg. It's something for me as a fan who's digging reading all the New 52 books to be able to say, hey, I'm loving Mr. Terrific. It's great to see the nod to that in there. I don't know. It's something that I don't know. I kind of appreciate. And this particular storyline is one of them because of it.
It's funny as we're talking, I'm re-looking at the sequence, when they land at the Skylark's base, and it's funny because as they're talking, just telling, oh yeah, we got all the anemones here, everything here, and as she's going down the list, ice theater, sled, dog kennel, trapeze, trampoline, torture rack. Never noticed the words torture rack there before.
Oh wow, I didn't notice that either.
I was like, oh, okay. I completely just glossed over, and I just noticed it now because I'm looking at it. I'm like, they really did give clues throughout from the beginning of this that these are really bad people. And I was like, dang, that's awesome.
I also love that she was like, here's the question I have. Did she know how to reprogram the jet because of her own skills or because she had insider access to reprogramming the jet? That I thought was another clue that maybe Emerson was involved somehow.
Oh, definitely. Definitely could could be a possibility, or it could vary. I would accept either answer. If it's her just personal knowledge, because these women are smart. They do have some knowledge. They do have some training. They know what they're doing there. So I could see either way, just her intelligence or the fact that she's gotten the blueprints of Viewport. She's got the blueprints of the jet. She knows the specialty behind it. She knows the ins and outs of the programming.
I wonder if that one that they said the rebel of the triplicate, if he might be able to convince her to turn.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they made that note to say that, and she had that disapproving look when they had Wally in the chair. So I wonder if that's a look of, I'm sick of doing this. Like, I really don't want to do it. And
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering if that's, maybe she might, he might come back with her. She might be a part of the team.
Yeah, I don't know. I really liked them with him. I liked that concept. I think that's what it was. When I was seeing their little gadgets and gizmos and how they could add something to Ollie's technology stable, I thought, especially when I saw the weapons expert as part of the creative team, I'm like, oh, maybe they're going the route where he's going to have this field team that he's working with, which I'm fine if they do or they don't. It was just something that my mind went to because I was trying to figure out, are they good or bad? Are they being legit and genuine? Or, was it really... Because you could see, how else would you meet the hero? Like, what other possible way would if they really genuinely wanted an audition for him and really genuinely wanted to work with him on some capacity, the only way to do it is the way that they did. Because it really showcased immediately what they bring to the table and how they were something unique and different, which is why I got swerved. And I thought that was something that was really great about the setup, is I was so totally buying into, look at all they did to try and just get to meet him. And I don't know, I thought it was a very well-balanced, very well-paced issue. I thought the new villains were great. I love there's a mystery of Emerson. You know, is he really a villain, or is it just that there's a different philosophy that's going on there? I don't know. And I like that it's not really clear to me on which it is. I also like that I wouldn't be disappointed in either scenario. I think in the many scenarios I think are possible for Emerson from what we've been rattling off here.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm throwing out the fact that I think he's a bad guy, and I think that if it turns out he's just a businessman, that would work as well for me, because he is reading as a well-written businessman. He's out to, one, save his job, save the company he's worked for, save his nice, healthy paycheck. So he is going to, be a little bit, on edge, be a little bit over the top when it's dealing with Ollie, because he sees Ollie as the threat to his money. Ollie's the guy that's going to, cause him problems and get him so, he loses his cushy job. So I could see that, that there is no truly evil intentions behind it. He's just doing what he's got to do.
Darrell, anything else you want to say about Green Arrow? Anything that we've kind of missed?
No, you know what? I don't know where it's going to go, which is, good, because you don't want to foresee it. So next issue, I'm kind of curious, is this arc going to be a new status quo for Ollie? Because so far we still don't know his history. We really don't know what drives him to even, want to be Green Arrow. I
think we need that. I mean, I don't know if they're going off the classic one. That's great. Go off the classic one and just let us know that. I want with you. I kind of want an idea of what is the motivating factor for him. I don't know that I need a full blown origin arc. If they did that, I certainly wouldn't cry. But I think his origin again is another one of those that's been, especially recently, done in that great Green Arrow Year One. If they're going that route again, I don't know that you need to. But it'd be great to have a few panels along the way if they're not going to do something like that just kind of give us a heads up on, like you said, what is his motivation, what is driving him. I feel it is the classic storyline, the classic arc. I think it is stuff that we've seen in things like Green Arrow Year One, I think. But
he did say that he didn't act when he should have, and that caused the death of someone. That was the one thing he did say during one of the fights he had in the previous run. So I do kind of want to know, what didn't he do and who died because of that. Just that little bit is fine with me. I don't need to know, his whole history. We kind of know a lot of, we've kind of been through this already, but just that added thing of I didn't act when I should have and it caused the death. That's something that Ollie hasn't been through before.
It was funny. Something that kind of really did sink in through our discussion. It was the one line that Ollie had when they're explaining to him all the stuff they did to him to keep him interested, to get him there, where he's like, have you glanced in the mirror lately? You didn't need the juju juice.
Yeah, I remember that.
I loved that line at the time because I remember thinking the exact same thing. But as we've been having this discussion, I realized why they did the juju juice. It got him off guard. Yes, if they hadn't done him, if they hadn't drugged him, he would have come with them immediately, and he would have been, yes, but he would have followed them. He would have walked right into the trap. But when he got there, he would have been thinking clearly. He would have recognized that these three, this is most likely a trap. I better be prepared for this. He would have been more prepared with just even the crossing over, not losing his jet, and just all the little extra things that happened to him along the ways. And so again, it shows really kudos to the writing that they would have that little attention to detail, how they were able to not only get him there, but get him in the trap, keep him in the trap, and then prevent him from actually getting out of it.
Anything else you guys want to throw in about this book?
No.
I really liked it for a first issue. It's a series that I've been digging, especially every issue. I think every issue it's been getting better and better, and I think it is because of my history with Green Arrow that it was. don't want to say it's been taking me a while to get attached to it. It's just a while to get used to the fact that this is a relaunch of Green Arrow, versus it being the same Green Arrow that we've seen for so many years. And I think it is because of the character's longevity in that previous status quo. And I really thought it's done. If you're going to switch creative teams, this is a really good creative team to go with. And I'm really digging the direction of the book so far. And it's really important that I think, especially with it being only 7 issues in, there is a connection to elements that were set up in the previous arc of the series, especially with the girlfriend or friend, whatever you want to call her, being able to have a role in his decision-making with the company. I think that would be something that I'd like to see where and if that's going anywhere.
He did just thank me, right?
Indeed, he did, sir.
Weird.
Our next chat is going to be about Detective Comics number 7. Written and penciled by Tony Salvador Daniel. Inks by Sandu Floria. Background assists by Joel Gomez. Colors by Tomio More. Lettering by Jared K. Fletcher. Cover by Tony Salvador Daniel and Tomio Floria. Assistant editor, associate editor, Katie Kubert. Associate editor, it is assistant editor, right? Katie Kubert, associate editor, Harvey Richards. Editor, Mike Martz. I've got to get better with my abbreviations on that, but Batman is created by, of course, Bob Kane. Apologies to any name butchery. Detective Comics, guys. It's funny, I spend so much time on the podcast talking about how much I'm really enjoying Scott Snyder's Batman run, and I stand totally behind that. I think it's just a terrific, terrific title. But every week that there is a new Batman book coming out, I'm really satisfied with the direction of the Bat universe. I'm satisfied with the fact that these books all feel different. They have a very different focus, a different way of approaching Batman storytelling. This is a lot of what I enjoyed about Tony Daniel's Batman book before the New 52. So this is a book for me that I find him to be an underrated Batman writer. Like, he's not one that I shout out the same way that I do Scott Snyder, but yet, or Peter Tomasi and so on. But it is one of those books that I'm really enjoying the visual look and the detective stories that are being told here. What about you guys? Where does this book fall for you? Or how are you digging it, Darrell?
Well, first and foremost, Tony Daniel's art is the driving factor that attracted me to this book in particular, because he just has a style that the way he draws action, especially with Batman, is just amazing.
Jim, what about you?
Well, I got to co-sign. Just the artwork is something that is spectacular, but I really do like his take on Batman, his style, his pacing. So it's funny. I am more of a writer guy behind when backing the story, and I like his writing, but I also do appreciate just how it looks. This is a really solid Bat title for me, and when I rank my Bat titles, a lot of times this doesn't get as high as it should, just because there's so many. Like, I'm a Damian fan. I love Damian. He's a little monster. So, Batman and Robin, the Batman title, there's other titles that are really focused more, have him more of a front focus. Those books are getting more of my attention. But then I pick up this book and I read it. I'm like, come on, this is a classic, cool Batman. I'm digging what I'm reading here. I'm digging this style. I like his interpretation of who Batman is and who Bruce is and Alfred. He does a great Bat family connection.
Yeah, it's funny how when you were mentioning writing, his writing is something that has really surprised me as he's gone on as a writer, I think, on Bat books. There have been particular arcs of his where I've been trying to solve the mystery ahead of time, particularly when he was writing Dick Grayson. And I liked, like Darrell, and I'm assuming, Darrell, you're also referencing his work with Grant Morrison when he was the artist for that particular run.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he really did a terrific job in that run of really just capturing great Batman storytelling. And like you said, for me, Batman, you want to see a lot of great Batman action. And I think one of the great things about having different titles is you can showcase the different facets of Batman. He's never been a one-trick pony. A lot of times I think he gets kind of lumped in as being one kind of vigilante. And then, I think for us true fans that have read so much Batman, that over the years, writers have taken different focuses and different directions of this guy. There's a lot more to him than a lot of times what the surface shows. I loved the Penguin in this arc.
Yes.
I thought Dark Knight has done a pretty good job of making the Penguin pretty fierce again. But then when you come back into this series, it builds off of that. And then that mini-series that we just saw so recently with the Penguin, that Pride and Prejudice series, I think we've seen just some... This is really making the Penguin relevant again as a player in Gotham, not just some weasel that's running a club. I think he's seen kind of a reemergence in the New 52 as being a power player and a very dangerous, threatening power player, which is something I think Penguin sometimes comes off as more of a joke than an actual real threat. And I don't feel that way at all with the New 52 version of the Penguin. I don't know if you guys are having that same experience with him, but I'm really loving the fact that I feel the Penguin is a very viable villain.
Yeah, he's definitely crime boss, organized crime, Godfather, little bit of freak show thrown in there, but it's part of who he is. He's not just that wah, 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 Burgess Meredith version, which a lot of people still have locked in your head. If you mention the Penguin or Danny DeVito, they'll go to that. I'm like, no, Penguin's is this really cool master manipulator. He's the puppet master pulling the strings and just this completely sinister, nasty dude who, I always wanted to see this type of Penguin up on the big screen. I wanted to see just this, nasty, just completely, evil person. But then as he's, as he's evil, as he is just this killing, this killer, there is, that little bits of his story that make you kind of feel bad for the guy. Makes you feel like, what if he had grown up in a normal house? What if he had grown up in a loving home and had his parents had been nurturing of him and not, treated him like a monster? Would he have, be turned into the monster, or could they have actually? Is there a redemption for Oswald?
Darrell, how do you feel about the Penguin in the New 52?
I always preferred him to be the like the kingpin of crime type of character. As opposed to either being a joke with the umbrellas or, some mutant morphing penguin like he's portrayed in the Burton Batman. So I like this take. They made him dangerous. They made him evil. But then at the same time, he did love his mother.
Yeah.
And he did love a woman, that wasn't an evil woman. She was a kind woman, and he did love her.
I like that he's crafty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Be that big in Gotham, where you have Batman, if they made him too silly, Batman should have taken him out a long time ago.
Absolutely. I think we had this stretch for a while where he was intimidated by Batman, and I liked it. Don't get me wrong; I'm not going to go back and say I didn't. I really enjoyed that storytelling back then. I think if you're going in a new direction, though, to make this viable and fresh and new with the Penguin, change the status quo up, and that's what they've done here. And I like that it feels like that he is that same guy that we read before, but that he's got a new opportunity here. One of the things that I really liked about this particular arc in general as it's been going on, I like that when you got this snakeskin Jill's sister storyline going on with the Penguin and these fourth or fifth tier villains that don't even we're seeing you for the first time because you're not worth Batman's notice. I like the way that that's all playing out because you see a Penguin who is manipulating the events around him. And when people think they've one-upped him because of knowledge and informants and money that he's spent carefully, he knows as an information broker just a little bit more than somebody else does, because information's power. And a lot of times, Penguin's one of those guys that can trade influence and power and protection in exchange for information and things that he can use. But you can never truly ever trust him because he's always got an angle, and he's always going to go out of his way to make sure that anybody he's screwed over, if it doesn't serve his purpose for others to find out, is not going to be able to speak about the situation, which is something I always like about it too. Jim, you're right. It feels very mob oriented, and I don't know. It's something that I've really dug about this. I like the snakeskin thing. I thought was really cool.
Well, it was funny. As I'm going through these issues, I saw the double cross of Snakeskin. I saw that just playing out because, she was pretty obvious, just her disgust for him, and you could see she was just using him for something. I thought she was just using him just to steal the money. I wasn't thinking two steps beyond that, and I didn't see Penguin's double cross, of the other well, I'll call them mob bosses, even though they aren't, of the other, bad guys. I didn't see that one coming until, right before it actually happened in this issue. So those were some great stories laid out over a couple issues that I was like, oh, that's neat. I want to have that type of story going on in Detective. And I want to be able to, as I'm reading it, put things together and then read the reveal. Like, yes, I got that one right. Ooh, I missed that one. That's kind of cool.
I like that Batman saved the sister. I like the way that all played out. I like that there was an intensity to it. Like there was a great cliffhanger with it. Yeah, I knew he was going to save her. That's something it's Batman. You kind of expect that. But the way that it played out for me, there was an intensity there that I think even when you know something's coming, it's how it is presented that I think is something that's interesting. And a lot of the action that Darrell was alluding to earlier, I loved how that played out here between the fans and the ice and Batman, the Bat Sub, and all those things that, just that last-minute use of a gadget, that last-minute ditch effort, which it's not just the gadget itself, it's the fact that Batman used it in a way that's a little bit more unconventional to kind of cause that from happening. I don't know. That was something that stood out for me.
A little more unconventional. Use it as a giant battering ram. Okay.
Yeah.
But I love the quick thinking, and I could hear the movie voice of Batman just telling Alfred, now send me the sub now
and pray to me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I always hear Kevin Conroy's voice. I always hear. When I'm reading the Batmans and any of these books, I'm always hearing that. And it's, even especially that Alfred, no, just that gruffness to the voice. I'm like, I heard that. I was just like, oh, that's cool.
It's funny how I really like the various Batman voices, the main ones that we've had over the years. There's a lot. Kevin Conroy stands out for me. Obviously, Adam West does from a certain era as well. But then, it is the Christian Bale one for me. I really, I know a lot of people crack on that.
Oh, I love it.
And it is over the top and stuff, but to me, it's about protecting an identity, and I dig that. That's something that, like, how can you hear that guy, pray to me, and start thinking to yourself, oh, that's Bruce Wayne. You're just not going to go there.
I love it. Even the Batman they use for Young Justice.
Yeah.
I love that voice. It just fits, and it has that more, it's more of an emotional thing, like, even you can hear him that how he cares about Robin and the way he's talking to the team. It's a little different than what we're used to with Batman.
I like that recent disappearing grown-ups storyline that was on Young Justice, where you got to see the adult heroes and the young heroes and Captain Marvel being kind of a focal point to all that, and it was great because you got to see the plan exchanges where Batman's being the strategist on one side, but Aqualad on the other. It was great to see that kind of respect between the two teams, the teen group and the JLAers, or the at least the adult magic group. I don't know. There's something about that series that I'm really digging because they seem to be capturing the tone and feel of like the current DC universe in that series in a way that I didn't expect. Like, it feels very much with the appearances of the various heroes. Like you mentioned, Batman, but not just him. I thought Zatanna, Zatara, everybody that's made an appearance, including the actual Young Justice team, they all feel like characters that are very much inspired and reminiscent of the characters that are currently today characters you can read in the DCU. And I thought that tone is something that is, I think that's a series that you can jump off of to this main universe. I do. I think you can jump off from that animated series to this main universe and feel like tone-wise, it's matching a lot of these comics. I think. I don't know.
I think so too.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely had a good feel. It has a good feel to it. And just because I know right now there's probably someone yelling at their iPod or their computer or whatnot, it wasn't pray to me. It was swear to me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, whatever.
Okay.
You said pray to me, but I just got to throw it out there just because I know there's somebody going to be yelling about it. So
how
probably
dare
Batman.
You, Sean?
yeah,
Probably Batman. Well, I don't like run around doing it all the time. I just like the movie.
You don't love comics, then why are you not doing that?
Because I'm busy reading the comics. I don't have time. We just talked about this earlier. I don't have time to get to all the comics I want to read, much like less to run outside down on my street yelling "swear to me." Although if they lock me up,
I've periodically used the Bat voice.
Really?
I find it helps in on the intimidation and when questioning people.
Give me my Big Mac and fries.
Yeah.
Something like that.
You get great service.
Yeah. Or I get arrested.
I want Samoas and Thin Mints. Yeah, you're right. It has like endless uses.
Hey, with your kids, man, I say go for it. I think it would work.
Yeah, I'd be written up. You're doing
Mr.
what?
Whalen went crazy.
I'm Batman.
In a weird voice.
Yeah, they've got to take you away. I don't think they would like that.
Where's your homework?
I bet he'd do it, though.
That's true. I swear I turned it in. Swear to me. Yeah, I'd be fired, and rightfully so.
That kid would learn. Homework is important.
Yeah, it would. And I'd learn what it's like to be without a job. Yeah, when comic characters don't work out.
Did you ever watch Community? You two watch Community?
Yeah. I watch it. I love it. Do you watch Community,
that
Jim?
part when he acted out Batman for real.
Jim, have you ever watched it, Community?
No, I haven't.
Oh, terrific
you have
show.
To see you have to see one of the episodes. I forgot which episode it is, but but it's for this season though. You have to see it if you can go on Hulu or something. And it's him dressing up like they thought someone broke his DVD, his Batman DVD. So he puts on the suit, and he totally has the voice and everything. And it's just hilarious to see him, act out Batman.
Our deal is for me to keep your money safe. You can handle yourselves just fine. And, I mean, yeah, like the ultimate opportunity. And if they die there, oh well.
Keep the money.
I liked his rendition of Alfred.
Yeah.
In this, I thought that was really great. I think Alfred's role in the New 52 has been something that I liked the development of him prior to New 52, so I was glad to see that was something that was continued as the New 52 continued on. Like, he really is an important confidant in all the books that he's appearing in. And his role, he's definitely showcased as someone that Batman can 110% rely on in every situation.
Well, I love that they're going to actually when they do the backups, when they start adding the backups to the Bat books, they're actually going to get into Alfred's family history.
I still want to see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned Alfred. One of the thoughts that popped through my head while reading this was that initially I was saying Alfred needs a code name himself because he constantly is throwing out the word Alfred. When they're in communication and through the mic, and it's going to be a secure channel, but he's still using the word. And I was like, it's not that good of an idea. But then I started thinking even farther beyond that. Because Bruce Wayne is directly connected now to Batman as a sponsor, if anybody were to hear Alfred and were to say, hey, Bruce Wayne's butler's Alfred, it wouldn't be giving up his secret identity, because every time Bruce is talking to him saying Alfred, Alfred's calling him Batman or Sir. So he's not calling him back by his first name. So there is no exposure of Bruce Wayne. Because there's already is the connection between, the Wayne family and Batman. It would make sense that Batman is in contact with Bruce Wayne's butler because of the whole, the Wayne Enterprises sponsoring the Batman, Inc. and everything that goes on there.
I'll be curious to see what happens with that secret identity thing, because it's funny how the Batman Inc. thing, I like that it's a part of the New 52. I like the way that they seem to be more subtle with it, and I want to be careful with this because I liked a lot what Morrison was doing with it, and I like that we're going to continue on with Batman Inc. in the New 52, so I think that's cool. I like, though, with the New 52 and the relaunch of it and the fact there's a younger Batman, that it seems to be a more subtler approach to the Batman Inc. thing. Like, it's there, but it's not as big in the media eye as it was previously.
I don't get, it doesn't matter if it's a part of this universe or not to me, but it feels like it's not.
That's what I'm getting at. I mean, it's not, I think it's there. I think Bruce Wayne has a role of sorts with him. I don't think it's been clearly defined yet, because there's been allusions to it in the regular books. And I know they announced that the New 52, when Batman Inc. launches, it's part of the New 52. Mm-hmm. I forget who told Jim. Were you the one who told me you heard that at a convention, or did somebody told me that they heard that at a convention? I'm not entirely sure who. It might have been somebody on our forum, so I apologize without the reference. But there was somebody verified with me that they were at a convention and they heard that it was going to be a part of the New 52. So we'll see when that book launches.
Well, Batman Inc. itself, the concept is a part of the New 52.
Well, it's one of the books it's replacing the ones that they ended.
Right.
But they've alluded to Bruce being a part of Batman's world prior to that. I forget what book it's actually been presented in, but it's definitely been presented that he is a part of Batman's world. I wonder if it's to the same scale of what we were seeing before. I like this whole thing with Charlotte, and the her one eye approach to taking out a victim.
Yeah.
But then Snakeskin then taking on the identity of the person that's taken out, showing the partnership between the two.
Yeah, again, it was neat seeing her because I was throughout this whole thing. I'm thinking, okay, she's going to double cross Snakeskin, steal from the Penguin. I didn't see those two were working together. I didn't see that, being part of the giant equation. And I liked as this gets played out, Batman's like, when he puts all the pieces together and he knows what's exactly going on, he starts looking out for her, saying, hey, you're in way over your head. You have no idea what you're up against or who you're dealing with. And, yeah, she's a bad guy. Yeah, she's, tried to kill him and, did all sorts of nasty stuff. But in the end, she is being played by a very dangerous man. And I like that Bruce is still able to try to help her, try to save her, try to get her out of harm's way. It's that whole, the hero has to save all of the innocents, even the innocents that, aren't so clean. They're not, they got a little bit of blood. They got a little bit of, they're not squeaky clean, but they're not the Penguin. They're not the Joker. There is levels of evil. There is levels of bad guys.
Mm-hmm. And I should clarify, I meant Jill. Charlotte's the sister, the one that Bruce had saved. I think I called her, I think I reversed the two when I was just talking about that. I like that Penguin, when he travels places, has kind of an entourage around him. It's not just him. He's not bulletproof or things like that. He would have security guards. He would have trusted confidants that are around him. And expendable, for lack of a better term.
Definitely. Your hired hands. You come in, you protect me, but if you get killed, you get killed. Oh well.
Well, it's neat seeing the fact that he has the females for the bodyguards surrounding, but as you watch and look at how they're walking around him, yeah, they're nicely dressed. It would look, oh, okay, that's some, arm candy for the Penguin. No, look at how they're actually sitting, how they're walking, how they're keeping eyes around. They got their eyes peeled to all directions. They are a security detail. They are taking care of him, moving him to a secure location. There was little subtleties in the faces and the eyes and stuff like that I picked up that you really see, okay, these aren't just a pretty face. These women actually have some form of training, have some form of security training. They're not just going to be something you can knock over with just with ease. They're actually going to give you a fight, and they know what they're doing. And I liked seeing that little subtle stuff to it.
Well, they would never. I mean, to use them is kind of smart because you wouldn't really think of them as security. So if they do come at them, they're going to underestimate these girls.
Speaking of training, I really liked when Jill recognized that Batman was there.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes with villains, there's that one-upmanship that Batman always has. Mm-hmm. It's great to see a villain who also has training, and that it didn't. To me, that didn't diminish Batman's skills at all. It applauded her skills, and it's in his world. He's going to encounter people with all kinds of diverse training, and that would be how these people survive in a metahuman world. You know, like she's not a metahuman, but she's playing in a metahuman world with a snake skin and things like that. So how did she get there? How did she get the respect of people like Snakeskin and all that? It's because of her skills and what she brings to the table. You could see from these moments what kind of a partner she is and what she adds to it, because she would be the one, obviously, that would take down the victim that then Snakeskin would become.
Yeah, and she's throwing down pretty good with the bat. This one, bottom stretch panel there, she's flipping and, kicking and punching and whatnot. She's not completely getting blown, just completely blown over. She's holding her own a little bit. He would have taken her eventually. There's no doubt that her level is nowhere near his, but there is some skill.
Yeah, he held back. He definitely was trying to get her attention.
You know what's really grown on me? Batman's armor. Like, I like the way that, the pieces of it are, like, segmented. You can kind of see where there would be points to bend and move and do the things that he would do. With those seams where they're at, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I like that it looks like armor without being overdone. Like, I don't want him to look... I love Iron Man, but Batman shouldn't look like Iron Man. And it's got a nice little fit of sleek, while at the same time looking like a... more of a like the survival suit in Batman Begins, without having to totally go the movie level, if that makes sense. It's a nice little mixture of functional with comic booky, for lack of a better technical term.
And I like how they all have the same, like Robin and Nightwing and Batgirl. They all have the same type of suit, so that you can tell it comes from the same place.
When the other, the lesser villains show up, and
the C team,
the C team, yeah, I think you're giving them too much credit. But when they're holding Jill captive there, I love Batman saying, "Okay, so where's Penguin's security now?" And really, the whole point was for Penguin to take them out, so then Penguin gets the money.
Yay!
That's it.
Yeah, I love that Hypnotic tries to take control and just bam, punch to the face. It's like, you're new here. Radio control waves don't work against me.
See, that's something with Batman, too. Batman's got to have those cool moments where mentally he's a one-up on somebody. It doesn't always have to be the physical end. I always like to believe that Batman's got, a good strategic mind that's going there. And this is being handled really well in the New 52. They're putting up against villains that I think are very compelling. But at the same time, you do feel like he's Batman, Yeah. He's got to be that point in time where you're like, you know why you lost? Because he's Batman. And there's moments like that where he does stuff like that. It's like, yeah, and that's why he's Batman. Because nobody else is going to handle that just that way. For me, that's where I geek out. In those moments where I'm like, yeah, that's Batman. And this book has a lot of those moments.
And you knew there was no way those guys would have any chance against him. And it was still fun to read those couple pages of him just going through them saying, don't you idiots realize you're in a death trap? Yeah, we got you surrounded. No, you've been set up. You're not going to last here in Gotham. They don't have the right style. They don't have the right strength to them. That was awesome.
And they don't even work together as a team. Like, they're sitting in a group like that. That's the perfect place for Batman to take you out.
I liked the whole ending and wrap up with Snakeskin.
Yeah,
where he came back, because I thought he was done for, and I love when villains come back like that. And I'm not entirely convinced Jill's done for either. These are two characters that hopefully we'll get to see again in some capacity. But I really liked how the whole thing ended. I thought it was just a really cool ending of the issue with an epilogue that made you wonder: does Jill survive? Does Snakeskin survive? Do they both survive? And I wouldn't have any issues either way if either of them doesn't. But I thought they were characters that were really well developed in this arc, enough so that I would love to see them as villains again appear in this book. And that's one of the things I'm really digging about the New 52. And I think this fits kind of our Green Arrow discussion earlier. It fits this discussion. I love the revamping of classic villains like the Penguin and all that, but I also love the introduction of new villains, new concepts. And I think there's a nice balance of that because I like the tried and true classics. I want to see the tried and true classics. I'm into those characters. But I'm also into give me a new concept, and make it interesting and make these characters ones where I feel like they're not throwaway, even though they could be. So Jill and Snakeskin, this might be the last time we see the two of them. I don't know. But there's a part of me that wants to see them again. And that's, I think, the sign of developing new concepts and properties that are becoming interesting. The Girls in Ollie's book, when that's done with them, whether what happens, what Jim mentioned earlier, where, they might possibly, one of them might join in turn or not, I don't know. I want to see more of them. They're interesting characters. And that's something I think that's creatively really important that they're doing, because that adds a little freshness to the books as well. Guys, anything else you want to say about Detective?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Darrell, tell us a little bit about the Taylor Network and your podcast, buddy.
Well, it's a group of podcasts that each go to a different thing where we have Comic Book Roadshow, which is basically interviews, and to go into DC flavor. We talk to people like Joshua Hale Fiakoff, who are doing iVampire, and also Paul Cornell doing Demon Knights, and also it's James Tynan, who is going to be doing the Batman Annual, and he's also going to co-write the backups that are going to be in the Bat books, and so you'll see some of that with the House of Wayne, the Fall of the House of Wayne, and it's his first podcast interview.
Nice.
So he got a chance to actually talk about his first real comic book project, and it's working with Scott Snyder. I mean, how big is that? So you can, check those things out. We have other, books out that, just like Jay Ferber is doing Near Death, and, people like, now I'm trying to think. Nothing comes to my mind. But you can go to the Taylor Network.wordpress.com and you can look at all the different podcasts. We have one, Nothing's On, which is with me and Donnie Salvo. And we also added Jim Dietz to the show. And we go into TV and movies and review, shows every week. And then we also have No Apologies, which it's a group roundtable where we review books of the week that that are our favorites. And we have, Chris also is my partner that does the interviews with me on Comic Book Roadshow. And he's also on No Apologies with me. And we have Juan Castro, who's an inker, who is doing the going back to Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. And we also have Nick Pitara, who is working with Jonathan Hickman. And, he's working on Manhattan Project right now. So he's part of the group. And, Raphael, who has also been, he's called into your show a couple of times.
Absolutely.
And, it's fun. We sit down, we talk with artists and writers and, people doing web comics, and we get into comic subjects and, anything that, that goes into the fanboy, world, and we talk about that. And then we have Yeah, I Said It, which is with me and Simba, and that's not for kids. That's the comedy podcast where we get a little raunchy, but it's all fun. And also Happy Hour, which is on No Apologies with J.K. Woodward, where it's me and J.K. and we go to our local bar that we enjoy and we record. We've had Jamal Igle on, and we've had a few other podcasters from Remote Control on, and it's been kind of cool. The other writer from Box Office Poison, he came on the show, Alex Robinson, and we also have a Star Trek Arthur that's coming on this week, that we're going to have come down and talk about Star Trek and the novels that he's worked in and things like that. So
nice lineup. And then DC Noise?
Oh, and yeah, you can make me forget DC. How can I forget DC Noise? With my buddies Mike Myers and Keith Knudsen, and we get into DC and a whole bunch of other things. It's not as professional as this show, but
We're professional.
Boy, do we have you fooled.
It's a slight variation. We do talk DC books, no matter what people say. We do talk about DC comics, but it's just a fun podcast that we do. A bunch of us get together on Saturday night, and we just talk books and comics. All of it is we just love comics, period, and that's what it comes from. And we just have a good time talking about comics that we enjoy and every other crazy thing we think of.
I had a chance to be out. I had a really terrific time. I'd love to do it again because it was a lot of fun. So it's a podcast I definitely recommend. I really, having been on it, it's listening to it. These guys are these are exactly the same guys that you're hearing on the podcast, and it's just such a great time. So if you aren't listening to DC Noise, I think we really are great companion podcasts for each other. I think we offer something very different on both of our shows, and I think for anyone that's looking for more DC content, it's real easy to jump on both shows. We offer something different. I mean, and you don't want to listen to the same thing with both experiences. You want something a little different, and there's always room for something more. DeFixers.
Oh yeah, and DeFixers Hideout, which is it's basically a bunch of us get together and we talk pop culture and movie subjects and anything that comes up around, whether like we talked about Bill Cosby, his the whole thing of what Bill Cosby meant to TV and movies and things like that, and we talk Star Trek and Star Wars and how technology's changed and how it changes the way we read comics, and we do different things here and there. We talk a lot of TV and movies also, and we just have a good time. I mean, it just comes down to you like hanging out with the people that you hang out with, and we have a lot of common interests, and we all have fun just sitting and talking, and because you're basically with your friends. That's basically what it comes down to, and it's just cool to be able to get on a mic and talk to your friends, and it's amazing when people listen and then they tell you that they enjoyed it or they look forward to the show. And I mean, it just it's just so cool that the people that I've met, and good friends that I've met because of your podcast, Comic Geek Speak, all like all these different podcasts and forums and whatnot. And it all comes from, we all love comic books. And then from there, we find out that we like, certain movies, and we like certain TV, and we like certain books, and we have families, and it's just amazing how you have a community that comes out of just this love of these 22 pages every month, every week actually. So it's just fun.
And obviously, I'm enjoying your stuff because I'm rattling off your podcast before you are.
You are.
You've been a great friend to our show. I remember the first New York con that we met each other at. It was the first time that you and I actually got a chance to chat in person, and you've been a great friend ever since. A great supporter of our show, and just a great friend. Forgetting podcasting, you've been a great friend outside of podcasting. You and I have had a number of conversations that I really have been treasuring. So it's great to have you back on the show. Thank you for your support of our show and your friendship, and we'll definitely have to do this again soon.
All right. Well, thank you too for having me on, and I always love this show. This show it entertains me every week, and it gets me through the day at work. Sometimes when it's a really slow day. Because it's fun to hear, two people that are generally friends. You guys, you can hear that you're real good friends. You enjoy, hanging out and talking to each other. And everybody else, the audience, we get to sit back and listen to you guys talk about these books. And if it's something, even if it's something I haven't read, it's just fun to hear you talk about it because you give me a different perspective on it. Even being on the show today, I had a different perspective on Green Arrow because somebody else reads it and they catch things that you don't, necessarily catch when you're reading it, on your own. So it's just fun, and I think you do something for the industry as a whole because there's a lot of negativity that's going on about comics, and I think that's hurt us more than helped. And we need more, people like you guys and shows like you guys who, show the positive and show how many comics there are that are so good, that are worth reading. And if we did that with everyone, if we shared comics that we enjoy with more people, I think that we could help to grow this industry a lot more than talking about the stuff that we can't stand.
One of the things you were mentioning, the podcast communities earlier, I think the audience is such a great part of that too. Because one of the things I genuinely enjoy as a podcaster is, through Facebook groups, through forums, through just seeing people's reactions when they catch us doing goofy things like when I prayed to me before that Jim caught us from. He's right; somebody else would have caught it. How many times, on this show have I been concentrating on one thing and I'll rattle something off, and Jim, you too, and everybody. I think it's natural when you do this kind of thing. But then also, like you mentioned, perspectives. Like we'll be viewing a comic one way, and I mean we've got three of us right here who are talking, and we might have three different ideas, or by the end three same. It doesn't matter how we wound up in these particular conversations. But then somebody else afterwards will throw in but did you guys catch this panel? And I think this is happening. And whether we agree or disagree about that at the end, it's fun for me. That's what comics are about. That's what comic community is about. I think we all have always wanted this opportunity to talk about the content and to share ideas about what is going on in the content. It's one of the reasons why I do not in any way, shape, or form consider us a review show anymore. We're a commentary show. It's fun to talk about this kind of stuff. This is the stuff we want to geek out about wherever we're sitting down, at conventions or, in a comic shop or just, in day-to-day life. And I'm glad that we have such an opportunity of that through podcasting friends, through our audience, and through creators who have been kind enough to, give some of their time to our shows, to really be able to just kind of enjoy comics and enjoy talking about them on such a deep level. Because there's a lot of work that goes into, you mentioned the 22 pages that are put together in comics, and it's really fun to just be able to be a part of this. So, Darrell, I want to thank you again for being a part of the show and the show community, and I want to encourage everyone in the links to our show notes. You'll find direct links to the Taylor Network, to Fixer's Hideout, and of course DC Noise. So thanks again, as always, for the support and friendship.
Could you just once say, "Let's get in the car"? Is that so hard?
I want to shout out our show voicemail line, 1-440-388-4434, or Dr. Norge on Skype. As always, that's in our show notes, and it's always available on our website as well. So please call into the show. We love having you a part of it. Voicemails will return next week for sure. We got some calls that came in this week. Unfortunately, I've got to get the episode out right now, but I promise I will air all those voicemails next week, including we'll have some comments on them, and any new voicemails that come in. So please feel free to call in. $2.99 will have all of your voicemails on it as well. I want to thank once again our show sponsors, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, all 4 of the number 3 Vertigo issues of this brand new series are going to be available for that special discount, $11.96 regularly, 75% off, only $2.99. That includes the book we just talked about, Fairest. If you're picking up any of these titles, this is a great way to get them at a discount. If you're just jumping on board them, it's a great opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to try these out for the first couple issues. Let me jump on the bundle for issue number 3 and get them at a discount. I do encourage people, too. DCB Service is really great. If you are trying these titles out and you're like, oh, I wish I'd pre-ordered them, give them a shout about issue number 2. There's still an opportunity to probably grab some of those if you haven't, because I know I've had a lot of luck emailing them, and they've been able to add things to my order. So, the worst thing they could say is, hey, sorry, we can't, pre-order them anymore for you. But you might still be able to get them at that 75% off discount, so consider doing that. Over at InStockTrades.com, Batman Knightfall Part 1, $11.99. Knightfall Part 2, $10.79. Knightfall Part 3, $11.99. Remember, if you go to the website, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. You're really close with buying those 3 books. So if there's a couple other books that you wanted, get the free shipping too. You're getting 40% off each of those volumes, plus you're going to be getting amazing discounts on the other volumes as well. So please make sure to do that so that way you save some money over at some more money, I should say, over at InStockTrades.com. We will see everyone next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, talking about Hawkman.